It's okay. Tapi saya nak mula bersyukur kita kepada Allah SWT. Saya nak start itu. Satu line. Lepas tu baru start. Teks okay. Bersyukur kita kepada Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala oleh kerana dengan limpah keizinan dan inayahnya maka kita dapat mengadakan majlis muzakarah pakar pada pagi ini. Boleh tak? Lepas tu baru saya baca. Okey. Syekh Komander.
Menunggu isyarat tu.
Ha?
Menunggu isyarat.
Mau suara masuk.
Okay, dah sampai.
What do you think of my questions?
Sorry?
What do you think of my questions?
Provoking. Boleh sama.
Bagi saya kau kan. Ini lecture orang sejarah. Good to attend my cousin punya guru. Dia suka mandi jenazah dia sekarang. Berapa orang Syekh? 8.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang Mak Tuan Ahmad Saji dan juga para panelis yang saya hormati. Kita akan bermula insya-Allah dalam lebih kurang 2 atau 3 minit lagi. Dan apabila kita bermula nanti, saya akan memberikan aluan dan seterusnya akan saya ikut seperti ada program. Kita akan bermula dengan thematic address oleh Yang Amat Bahagiatun dan seterusnya dengan panelis-panelis yang telah kita jemput. Jadi kita insya-Allah berjumpa. Kita insya-Allah akan bermula dalam 2 atau 3 minit lagi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Yang Amat Bahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji bin Abdul Hamid, Chairman Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia. Yang Amat Bahagia Datuk Dr. Azizan binti Baharudin, Director General Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia. Sahibul Samahah Datuk Dr. Luqman bin Haji Abdullah, Mufti of the Federal Territory. Distinguished panelists, observers, media representatives, datuk-datuk, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Alhamdulillah, it gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone to the expert consultation with the theme Maqasidic Framework for the Formation of Khaira Ummah, the Best of People, organized by the Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia, IKIM. Today's expert consultation is the first program organized by IKIM for the year 2021. In view of the disruptions on many sectors caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, our discussion this morning on the principles of Maqasid Asyariyah with the aim of forming Khaira Ummah has taken extra dimensions. We hope that today's expert consultation will provide fresh insights on this topic from our distinguished panelists. Each panelist will bring their valuable experience to provide inputs to our discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin our program, it is my great honor to invite Yang Amat Berbahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji bin Abdul Hamid, Chairman, Institute of the Islamic Understanding Malaysia or IKIM, to deliver his thematic address to set the tone for our discussion this morning. Please welcome Yang Amat Bahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji bin Abdul Hamid.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tuan Syekh, ahli-ahli panel dan para pendengar sekalian. Terlebih dahulu bersyukur kita kehadrat Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Oleh kerana dengan limpah keizinan dan inayahnya, maka kita dapat mengadakan majlis muzakarah pakar pada pagi ini. Pada permulaannya adalah bermanfaat bagi saya memberi sedikit penjelasan mengenai 2 perkara yang kita akan bincangkan, iaitu Khaira Ummah dan Maqasid Al-Syariah. Mengenai Khaira Ummah, Allah Subhanahu wa taala dalam surah Ali Imran ayat 110 berfirman yang bermaksud, kamu adalah umat yang terbaik yang dilahirkan untuk manusia, menyuruh kepada yang ma'ruf dan mencegah dari yang mungkar dan beriman kepada Allah. Sekiranya ahli kitab beriman, tentulah itu lebih baik bagi mereka. Di antara mereka ada yang beriman dan kebanyakan mereka adalah orang-orang yang fasik. Para pendengar sekalian, dengan izin dalam bahasa Inggeris. The concept of ma'ruf includes doing good based on reasoning, akal, and in performing activities in the social, economic, educational, political, and scientific fields, which are beneficial to mankind in this world that can lead to good consequences in the hereafter. On the other hand, the concept of munkar or evil has opposite consequences, where activities can lead to, for example, environmental damage, manipulation, corruption, oppression, social injustice, and economic inequality. The terms fasad and batil are also included in the definition of munkar or evil. Khaira Ummah is an Islamic community that is true in Aqidah. Para pendengar sekalian, there are 5 principles of the Maqasid Sharia which form the imperatives in governance to create the Khaira Ummah, namely 1, the preservation of religion, 2, the preservation of life, 3, the preservation of intellect, 4, the preservation of progeny, and 5, the preservation of property. I now deal with the 5 principles, followed by some questions as follows. 1. In Malaysia, preserving the faith of people is provided in the Federal Constitution. Islam is the religion of the Federation, and other religions can be practiced in peace and harmony. The question is, how do we manage the practices other than the Ahli Sunnah wal Jama'ah on extremists, on those who are deviant from the true teachings, on Islamophobia? Number 2, with regard to preservation of life, it includes brotherhood, social equity, justice, safety, marriage and stable family, social unity, reduction of crimes, etc. On social unity, is it desirable to have a National Harmony Act? With regard to marriage and stable family, is a marriage charter desirable? Mengenai perlindungan warga emas, wajarkah diadakan satu piagam atau diadakan satu dasar penuaan? Mungkinkah warga emas diberi liputan dalam skim-skim takaful atas syarat-syarat yang tertentu? Orang-orang muda 18 tahun ke atas akan diberi hak mengundi secara automatik. We believe in the young as well as reverence for the old. This is the most underestimated of values. 3. The preservation of the intellect means protecting the mind from corruption, and that it should be instilled with noble values filled up with knowledge. Should we introduce in the school a curriculum, a subject on the mind, explaining the concepts of mindfulness and mindlessness? In Islamic religious schools, should we introduce the concept of the Islamic mind? Are there Islamic equivalents of word games, such as the crossword puzzles or number games such as Sudoku and Kakuro, to stimulate the mind and to test one's array of knowledge? Number 4, the preservation of the progeny concerns the protection of offspring and lineage. The world is now afflicted with increasing incidences of adultery, sodomy, lesbianism, homosexuality, and bisexuality, etc. Are the present laws adequate to counter these religious transgressions? If not, what kind of law should be promulgated? Number 5, the preservation of property entails protecting wealth of the people against expropriation, illegal transactions, denial of rights, fraud, bribery, violation of intellectual property rights, etc. In many countries, including in Islamic states, assets of companies are squandered through bad investments, fraudulent use of funds, etc. Should there be definitive Islamic regulations which define the qualifications and disqualifications to be board members of Sharia-based companies, and to define the offences which are against the principles of Islam? In order to preserve and expand family assets and to avoid conflicts, should there be a model of an Islamic family holding company? Sekarang ini kita melihat budaya rasuah semakin meningkat, termasuk di kalangan orang muda. Oleh itu, budaya menolak rasuah perlu diterapkan dalam golongan ini. Bagaimanakah kita nak terapkan nilai amanah dan integriti ini? Bermula dari sekolah sampai ke peringkat universiti. Apakah isi kandungan mata pelajaran anti rasuah? Baru-baru ini ada orang yang menyatakan bahawa pemberi rasuah hendaklah dihukum setimpal dengan penerima. Orang-orang yang terpalit dengan rasuah diberi sanjungan. Orang-orang yang memberi maklumat mengenai rasuah perlu diberi lebih perlindungan. Apa pendapat majlis muzakarah ini mengenai kenyataan ini? Di persada akhbar baru-baru ini dilaporkan aktiviti-aktiviti pembalakan haram, kemusnahan alam sekitar telah berlaku dan kesannya telah berganda dengan fenomena perubahan cuaca. Apakah respons kita terhadap perkara ini? Memandangkan bahawa aset negara telah dimusnahkan. Dan ini ada kaitannya dengan the rights of the future generations. Bagaimanakah hukuman terhadap pihak yang berkenaan, yang tutup mata? Perlukah diadakan sebuah undang-undang mengenai pemeliharaan dan perlindungan aset negara seperti sungai, hutan, gunung, bukit dan sebagainya? Para pendengar sekalian, jawapan-jawapan terhadap soalan-soalan yang dikemukakan sebentar tadi mungkin memberi sedikit sumbangan dalam perjalanan untuk menuju ke Khaira Ummah, iaitu amar ma'ruf, nahi mungkar dan kepercayaan kepada Allah. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Yang Amat Bahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji, for the insightful address, which contains many probing questions which we hope will be answered today, inshallah. I'm sure the thematic address will guide much of the discussion this morning. Yang Amat Bahagia Tun, Datuk-Datuk, ladies and gentlemen, the expert consultation will continue with the deliberations from our distinguished panelists. Each panelist is given 10 minutes to provide their inputs to the discussion. To begin our discussion, I would like to begin with Sahibu Samaha, Datuk Dr. Luqman bin Haji Abdullah, Mufti of the Federal Territory. Sahibu Samaha Datuk, in his thematic address, Yang Amat Bahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji has outlined a number of challenges facing the Islamic faith in Malaysia. On top of this, we are also facing challenges arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. In the Malaysian context, how does the Maqasidic framework help in making adjustments in facing the disruption as well as tackling the challenges faced by Islam? Sahibu Samaha, Datuk Dr. Luqman, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Muhammad Sheikh Saifuddin Muhammad Saleh, as a moderator for today's discussion. Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji Rahmi, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Profesor Dr. Azizan Nasruddin, Ketua Pengarah IKIM, and all the distinguished panelists in today's you call it as expert consultations on the Maqasidic framework for the formation of Khaira Ummah, the best of people. Actually, I am enjoying the speech by Yang Muhammad Tun on this topic. More on Maqasidic framework. Tone has touched on general concepts on the Maqasid Sharia and its application and how it can be applied into this situation. Getting back to Dr. Muhammad Saifuddin questions on the how does the Maqasidic framework help in making adjustments in facing disruptions such as the COVID-19 pandemic to preserve the religion. Maybe I can start with the very basic question on the Maqasid Sharia itself. If we go to the basic traditional classification of Maqasid, there are three divisions based on the level of necessity, what we call it Daruriyat, Hajiyat, and Tahsiniyat. In Daruriyat division, we have Hifzuddin, protection of religion, Hifzun Nafs, protection of life, Hifzun Nafs, protection of lineage, Hifzul Aql, protection of intellect, and Hifzul Mal, protection of wealth. On the preservation of religions, and this on these divisions on the Daruriyat al-Khamsa, as mentioned by Al-Ghazali, if we can quote Al-Ghazali in his Al-Mustasfa, هو أن يحفظ عليهم دينهم ونفسهم وعقلهم ونسلهم ومالهم. The purpose of Sharia upon the creation are on five matters, which are protecting them in terms of religion, life, intellect, lineage, and wealth. فكل ما يتضمن حفظ هذه الأصول الخمسة فهو مصلحة. Each one of these five basic protection holds one thing, which is maslahah. وكل ما يفوت هذه الأصول فهو مفسدة ودفعها مصلحة. The absence of one of them results in mafsadah. means these religions is go in parallel with the maslahah and to avoid mafsadah. Preservation of religions, we have usually in our deen, we have two things that we can base on. First, we call it azimah, and second, we call it rukhsah. Azimah is a normative religious ruling, and rukhsah is concessionary ruling. Regarding the adjustment of in facing discussion in this pandemic situation, how to preserve religion, how can Hifzuddin can be achieved in this pandemic situation. So we go to the basic classification of azimah and rukhsah. In our life, in our normal life, we go for azimah. That's the religious ruling that we have. We go for prayers, fasting, whatsoever. But at some situations, our deen, our sharia also provide what we call a rukhsah. So preservation of religions in today's, if we go to the way the most the situation that concern everybody now, for example, is on the Salatul Jummah, on the how to preserve, because in Hifzuddin, to preserve religion, is among the Hifzuddin is something related to prayer, our prayer, daily prayer, Jummah prayer, and also congregational prayer. So today we have this problem in which not everybody can go to the mosque. There are some restrictions, SOPs, and also the limited numbers are allowed to go to the mosque because of the situation that we have. So in this kind of things, many concerned about how we can preserve our religion at the absence of our very basic activities in our religious activity, in our religious daily life. So here comes what we call a rukhsah. As we know, in preservation religions, at the same time, we also need to avoid any mafsadah, any darar to ourselves and to the people surrounding us. For this, we have in Sharia, we have, for example, a guidance from the Prophet ﷺ. If we, one of the hadiths narrated by Ibn Abbas, when Abdullah bin Abbas ordered the one making the call to prayer to act at the end of the call for prayer, Sallu fi buyutikum, pray in your own homes. Ibn Abbas said, Ata'jabun min zalik, are you surprised with this statement? Laqad fa'ala zalika man huwa khairun minni, it has been done by someone more noble than me. That is the Prophet ﷺ. Inna jum'ata azmatun, the Friday prayer is an obligation. And the hadith goes on, but I do not like to order you to go out and attend prayers while walking on wet earth and mud. This hadith is in the situation of the heavy rain, and Ibn Abbas asked the muazzin to call to the everybody, Sallu fi buyutikum, do your prayer at your own home. This hadith has been the basis for our today's situation. In preservation of the religions, we have also to go for the rukhsah that the deen itself provide to us. For in the case of Jummah prayer, for example, now we have certain SOPs, limitations, but at the same time, we also can preserve our religion by doing, by go for this rukhsah, meaning that we actually do preservation of religion still within the framework approved by the religion itself in this situation of darar and mafsadah whatsoever. And another kind of point that we also should give our priority is the legal magazine that we have, the popular legal magazine, Tasarruful Imam ala Ra'iyati Manut bil Maslahah. A leader's decision is based on the welfare of his people. So what we have now in our country and all the part, another part of the world, what we have this kind of pandemic, and the ulul amri, the government has to handle this wisely to avoid any damage to the community, to avoid this pandemic become worse. So all the SOPs and restrictions made by the government only is to make sure that our daily life can go on after this with this SOP, and this SOP including restrictions and limitation to some of our religious activity on our on daily basis. But understanding that we in this deen we have rukhsah, as I mentioned, when we do something within this framework of rukhsah, meaning that we at the same time are doing our job to preserve this deen within the framework of Hifzuddin. Many keep questioning and keep condemning the situation that we have now, in which when our ulul amri impose some restrictions to the mosque and also some of the religious activity, there are some restrictions. They condemn this this situation because they sometimes cannot comprehend the situation and rukhsah that we have, which is also allowed by the deen itself. This is something that is very important to understand in this deen, that within the context of Hifzuddin, we have azimah and rukhsah. Sometimes we go in normal life, we go for azimah, but there are situations that we go for rukhsah. And all of when we go for rukhsah, it is also within the framework of Hifzuddin. In doing this, however, we also, the Muslim community also, understanding this principle, we as a Muslim and Muslim community also should do, should have some kind of creativity and innovations in doing religious activity. For example, if I can add some more points. For example, now we have the problem, one of the problems that we are facing now is on the mental health. Because of the situation that we have. Mental health, if we relate to our religions, we have the aspect of spiritual well-being that we must protect. So in this situation, one of the measures that I think we can strengthen is to strengthen the spiritual well-being in the Muslim community within these restrictions of limitations and these SOPs in MCO. So we need to aggressively promote religious activities such as kuliah lectures, religious lectures, using online to tackle the community surrounding the mosque. For example, the mosque, for example, can arrange activity using online lectures by online, and they can everybody surrounding the mosque can have the link to that activities. So this is more the thing that creativity is a matter of creativity of the Muslim community, how to handle things in the situation of pandemic that we have. And at the same time, even if we have this pandemic, at the same time, we can preserve our deen. We still working to Hifzuddin, to preserve our deen within the framework of restrictions that we have, and within the framework of rukhsah or al-azar that allowed by the Sharia itself. I think a lot of things I think we can create in this situation to preserve our deen, even in a very limited situation. But as long as we prepare so that we encourage people to move on and to still use measures that allowed in Sharia to protect our religion in this situation. Maybe we can encourage people to help the needy people or those affected by the pandemic in this to do a lot of sadaqah, to do a lot of wakaf in this situation. Because some people, not every people are affected by this situation. Some people, they are not affected much, but they still can help others to minimize to minimize the effect of this pandemic to some quarters of people. I think this is what we need to do in this situation, and I hope this very limited time that we have, I have covered the questions raised by our respected moderator, Dr. Muhammad Sheikh Saifuddin. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Sahibul Samahah Datuk, for the valued perspective on the preservation of religion or Hifzuddin. I would like to now move on to our second panelist, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Abdul Latif bin Muhammad from the Faculty of Medicine, University of Cyberjaya, to obtain his views vis-a-vis preservation of life. Professor Latif, what are the measures that can be taken under the Maqasidic framework to protect life, especially during times of crisis and disruptions, such as the one we are facing today? Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Latif, dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. I would like to go directly to the point, and I would like to reflect what has been happening in our country, in our society, in our population for the past one whole year. We are going to reach the stage that we have suffered this test of pandemic COVID-19 for almost a year now. Let's reflect on what have been done with in view of protection of life. Okay. Firstly, what has happened, what has been done is the first most important step is to control the spread of information. Yeah. So there has been a spread of information from the very beginning on what is COVID itself. Okay, what is the cause of this illness? What is the cause of this disease? Most importantly, how is it spread? And how can one get infected? What are the symptoms? What are the warning signs that will lead to danger? And the fact that COVID is actually life-threatening. Okay, the perception of COVID, which is just flu-like symptom, or it may just be a simple illness and everyone will be cured from it, is not true. And this information has been spread throughout the year. Whether or not people understand and believe it, that is another matter. But the effort of spreading the information has been widespread, using all forms of mass media and social media as well. The second point in efforts of life saving, which is the second important aspects of the Sharia, Maqasid Sharia, is organizing human resources, mobilizing human resources, which is more popularly known as frontliners, whether they are from medical frontliners, among doctors, paramedics, nurses, and also healthcare personnel, as well as security forces to protect spread of the illness and to isolate patients or personnel who are likely to spread the illness. Yeah? And also these frontliners are also mobilized to spread reminders and warnings to people regarding the illness. Okay. The third effort in life saving is to set up a unique and critical systems, yeah, where there are uh, SOPs, there are standard operating procedures uh, for prevention of spread, right from the control at borders, yeah, borders of the country, interstate controls, yeah, inter-district controls, yeah, where there is evidence of a red area or an area which there is a high incidence of illness. These controls are held not only physically, they are also spread to information of ban of travel, yeah, and these are efforts in controlling the illness to conserve or preserve life. Okay, so this is important, seen as preservation of life in the maqasid of Sharia. So the next aspect is provision of facilities. Okay, so right from the primary care at the ground, yeah. So there are facilities where facilities of screening, yeah, taking swabs using both PCR or RTK, yeah, that results can be obtained within a reasonable amount of time so that people can be informed that they should be, they are positive or negative, and the appropriate action that should be taken. Then there are also a system to be followed by those who have any warning conditions, that they can be easily referred to centers of care, uh, centers which can either treat them as soon as possible or control the spread uh, from uh, from those affected towards those who are close with them, those who don't realize that they will get infected if they are close with those who are affected. And there are secondary hospitals, there are places that has been converted into treatment centers, and there are hospitals which have been converted into uh, COVID centers, specializing in just focusing on the treatment of COVID. Yeah, there are also places that has been intensified, like committed ICU to take care of COVID patients, wards that are converted into COVID wards, dedicated to treat solely or focused on COVID-19 patients. There are also intensivists, specialists in the field of intensive care, concentrating on the ill patients who are intubated, ill patients who are deteriorating, and facilities, yeah, that are provided to treat this condition. Yeah, dedicated ventilators and equipments needed in the treatment of intensive care. So there are many actions that actually I can continue on elaborating that has excellently been done at the level of our society and our country, and there are also involvement of public, general public, those who are important personalities, those who are called influencers, are taken in to spread information and influence the society to start believing on the intensity of the illness and to take all the necessary precautions to contain the illness. Yeah. Now there are information readily available. There are reminders through SMSs, and there are accesses through apps, various apps that can be obtained easily at the flick of a finger. Yeah. There are also NGOs and associations who are involved in education, who are involved not only in helping spread the information, but also in distributing health related facilities, yeah, like spreading and giving out face masks, hand hygiene facilities, yeah. So we can see through the year, this very testing year, that it has brought about brotherhood. And answering Tun's question just now, brotherhood, the involvement of society in all levels of society, and it has been shown quite well through the year. Okay. Finally, not exhaustively, but finally, what we are hoping for in the next month, inshallah, is the availability of vaccine. Okay, and this can help us form what is called the herd immunity. And if it is successfully done, it can actually eliminate the illness and stop the pandemic at a national level or international level. Okay, much have been said. I have elaborated quite a few points on all the efforts that has been done through the year, through this very testing year, which has a lot of casualties causing death of innocent people, in fact, yeah, and even frontliners who actually work to save people became infected and died, unfortunately. May Allah accept them as shuhada, yeah? Because this is a test from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But having said all that I have said, what is hindering the success of all these efforts? Yeah? What is hindering, what is stopping this effort from being successful? Why are we seeing increasing number of deaths from day to day? Why are we seeing increasing number of new cases from day to day? This is the question that I would like to propose that we answer. And I find that the answer lies in individuals ourselves. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. So let us start by changing what is within us. Start by understanding that we need knowledge. We need true knowledge. We need the right knowledge. The first wahyu from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is about Iqra, which is the importance of having knowledge. So let us not be confused with all the news that we hear telling us that this is not a problem, this is highly political, this is just a twist of events for certain benefits. let us change our perception. Let us change our tasawwur, yeah, such that we believe that this is saving lives or preserving life is actually a very important aspect of Sharia. It is daruriyah, it cannot be compromised. So let us together participate in this action of saving lives. Whenever we wear a mask, we must believe that wearing a mask is not for show off. It is not only to prevent us from being fined. It is actually an act of ibadah. We are actually performing the Sharia and we are obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will be rewarded well by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we do things like this. If we confine ourselves and isolate ourselves in a quarantine because we are positive, don't feel that we are being tortured. Don't feel that we are just listening to some stupid advice. We must believe that it is part of an ibadah. We must believe that it is part of a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we are able to uh, uh, spiritually accept it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us generously. So I would like to conclude by saying that a few factors that we need to point in preservation of life is number one, to accept that we are in a condition that is life-threatening. People die by the day, okay? Number two, we must counter all the negative attitudes and information that we receive. Anything that we feel that is in doubt, we must clarify. Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun. We must ask those who know if you don't know, okay? And we must stop misunderstandings and stop the spread of wrong information. And we must prevent people from refusing or refusal or going against obedience to the standard operating procedure that has been ordained to help the society protect lives. Okay, we must work together and believe that this effort that we are doing is actually ibadah and part of the Sharia and part of saving lives. Okay, remember Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentioned in the Quran, "Waman ahyaha faka'annama ahyan nasa jami'an." Whoever helps save one life is as though he has saved humanity in general. Okay, so the reward is very, very large from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Okay, so we understand that these actions that we need to take are uh, 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 changes that are difficult because we are so used to traveling, we are so used to socializing, we are so used to visiting, we are so used to do things that we enjoy in life. But inshallah, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must make sabar. Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be with those who preserve sabr. Okay, and inshallah, if Allah is happy with us, Allah Ta'ala will reward us and stop this pandemic and save more lives. Okay, of course, people will die one day, have to die one day, but efforts of preserving life is ordained by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It is part of the Sharia that life is sacred for us to preserve. Okay, I understand that there is a lot of economical and financial constraints that are affected by this pandemic, and some people will not agree with all the SOPs because it causes a lot of harm to financially, but don't we listen to what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran? وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنْفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. But Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala ended this ayat with فَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give good tidings to those who are patient. So let us observe patience, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will give us good tidings in the future, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والله ورسوله أعلم بالصواب. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Latif, for giving us an insight on the efforts to preserve life, especially during a pandemic such as the one that we are facing today. Ladies and gentlemen, joining our expert consultation from Kelantan is our next panelist. Yang berbahagia, Professor Dato' Dr.
Thanks for waiting. We'd let the host know that you're here.
Consultant Neurosurgeon, Department of Neurosciences, School of Medical Sciences, University of Science, Malaysia. In Yang Amat Bahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji's thematic address earlier, he mentioned two terms, namely mindfulness and mindlessness. Yang Bahagia Dato', in the context of preserving the mind or hifzul akal, is the present education system and curriculum enough to mold a mind and create a mindful person? What measures would you recommend to mold the young generation to have the Islamic mind, especially in view of the challenges brought forth by a disruption such as the COVID-19 pandemic? Yang Bahagia Professor Dato' Dr. Jafri, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope you can hear me all the way from Kelantan.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sheikh, Tun Ahmad Sarji, Abdul Hamid, Dr. Luqman, Prof. Latif, Dr. Aznan, Ustazah Safina, Prof. Muhammad Shukri, my colleague from USM, Dr. Musa. I am an imperfect human being trying to look at your second principle, the principle of the preservation of the intellect. And with this, I will try to answer the two issues, issues 1 and issues 3. So if you can bring up the PowerPoint slide that I prepared, Puan Nazatul. I hope all of you will be able to look at this. So the discussion that I'm going to give, hopefully for the next 10 to not more than 15 minutes, is how to preserve the mind and create a mindful person. And it is very interesting to see that it is with the present education system and the present curriculum system, it is totally difficult to have a curriculum which involve mindfulness because we separate the classes. We may have civics, we may have other classes, religious classes, but the best is when we hybrid the two issues together. It is very easy to have the state of mindlessness, but it's very difficult to have the state of mindfulness. You can have the state of mindfulness and mindlessness at the same time. And every human being, you will see, will have different mindfulness index. So as you can see in the problem statement in here, we do not have hybrid tested verified programs combining Islamic values, the Quran and Hadith and science. We have nothing at the kindergarten level. We may have what we think we have, but it's not verified at the primary school level and also at the secondary school level. And as I know, even in universities, you're left alone to study whatever you need to study when it fills up the mind for the mindfulness and the mindlessness. And the most important thing is lifelong learning, because lifelong learning is something that we can do to correct those who have left the universities. For the young people, we still have time. For what people like me, for example, I will have to have a lifelong learning capability to combine Islam and other education sectors to improve my level of mindfulness and to lessen my level of mindlessness. Next slide, please. As you can see that most of our curriculums in our government schools are very secularized, even in our universities. And when we want to talk about a mindful person, there's two interpretations. You can interpret it according to the non-Islamic way, or you can interpret it as the secular way. So the best example, the best ideal will be following the mindfulness, thinking and behavior of Nabi Muhammad SAW and sahabat-sahabat. And inculcate is, learning from the past, inculcating it into the present and also for the future. Because the young people now have been left far behind. And we may have to find 2021, 21st century mindful icons. To find these icons are not easy. People use da'is, they have these TV shows where they are able to get the young people interested in this field. But they do not cover mindfulness, and thus our younger generation are going further and further. It is still good. You pray 5 times a day, you fast, but you throw rubbish into the Kelantan River. That's not mindful. So we have to change this. We have to integrate this. And this is not easy, especially when people have left their kindergarten, their primary schools, their secondary schools, where they learn from their teachers and also from their parents about how to be mindful. And we find out that developed countries, like our next door Singapore, are more mindful than the Islamic countries. And why is it? Do we need Islamic religion to be mindful? Can other things replace? But in our definition, in our discussion today, we want to create Islamic mindfulness, whatever it means. And in the COVID-19 period, we have no choice but to use the web. It's difficult to do face-to-face in surah, masjid, and workplace. And using the web, there have to be some modification in how we are going to send our mindful messages. Next slide, please. So what is mindfulness? So if you look at my definition, of course with references, is the basic human ability to be fully present and aware of where we are and what we are doing, not overly reactive, overwhelmed by what is going on around us, and which is a double-edged sword. Because when we are mindful, we can be influenced by good things and we can be influenced also by bad things. So mindfulness in Islam is a value of muqarabah, watching, observing, paying attention, and muraqabah is a constant knowledge of one's servants and belief in the supervision of truth and glory for God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim which is in this state has continuous full knowledge that Allah is the knower of him or her, both inside and outside, and involves self-awareness and awareness of one's relationship for God. That's why today I am a bad Muslim, because my mindfulness index is very low today. Tomorrow, suddenly I pick up the Quran and I read one verse. I go to the masjid and put 50 ringgit in the masjid box, for example. My mindfulness index has increased. So mindfulness change from day to day, hour to hour, even second to second. Next slide, please. So mindfulness needs understanding and teaches good things. How to modify for old values to new values. We used to say that our parents, our great-great-parents, great-great-grandparents have better values than those in 2021. We have no proof though, but we seem to highlight those values and how, if they are good values, how do we bring them to this year, 2021, and teach our younger generation, even the elderly, want to recall back the old values of the yesteryears. So the transformative Islamic social phenomenon has to be established. It has to be a way of living for Muslim and non-Muslim. It cannot be mindfulness for Muslims only. I don't think it's going to be a good world. It will have to be mindfulness for Muslims and non-Muslims. And we have to find an Islamic innovation with new ideas. I have no ideas today. I told you my mindfulness index today is pretty low. But tomorrow, maybe it will improve. And using the internet, using icons, using people who are respected, starting with people at a young age. We know in brain science or neuroscience, the brain matures very fast from the age of 2 years onwards till lifelong, but usually at the age of 27, we stop maturity of the brain. Can we go to the next slide? And we find out, can we drop the slide? I want to show you the brain. So this is the brain. This is a real human brain that I'm showing to you. So this is the back of the brain, the occipital lobe. This is the front of the brain, the frontal lobe. So as we mature and we become mindful, we mature from the back to the front of the brain. A child matures from visual communication. So to teach mindfulness to a child, we have to show and demonstrate. And as the brain matures till the age of 27 years of age, proven by science, the person can learn mindfulness not only by looking, but by reading, by listening, by interaction, social interaction, because at that time the brain is matured. So this is how we can use neuroscience to improve mindfulness in Muslims and non-Muslims in Malaysia, and also reduce mindlessness, because the state of mindlessness and mindfulness is going on at the same time. Even when I'm talking to you, I have certain parts of my brain that are undergoing mindlessness now, and also certain parts of the brain which are undergoing mindfulness. So when I'm talking to you, because I'm on call today, I have patients in the hospital, I have to have a state of mindlessness, so that if my state of mindfulness is strong today, I would not be able to talk to you. I'll be running and looking at the patients at the beds in the hospital. So that is what's going on. Can you bring up the slide again? The neuroscience part. So as we see, which is very important, the frontal lobe, which is the lobe which I showed you just now, matures last. And there are different parts of the brain. We call the prefrontal lobe, is the lobe right in front, bahasa Melayu otak depan, is involved in problem solving. The hippocampus, learning and memory, because we learn and memorize the values of mindfulness. And when the hippocampus is not working well, there's a lot of mindlessness going on. And then empathy and compassion is very important in Islam, and it comes from the temporal parietal lobe of both sides of the brain, and the reaction to threat, because threat comes also, there's good threat and bad threat, and it comes from this structure by the side of the brain called the amygdala. And because all these brain structures are involved in mindfulness and also in other mental illness like depression and other diseases of the mind and stress, we have to see how mindfulness can be used to improve the mental health of our Muslims in Malaysia and also those outside if it works. Therefore, we have to look into the research on mindfulness. The research into secular mindfulness has increased from 150 papers in 1995 to 2,500 papers in 2021, which only 80 involve Islam. You see how weak we are? So I suggest that we should increase the research. Maybe IKIM can head this, get grants from the Prime Minister's Department, for example, to look into mindfulness and depression, mental health, way of thinking, etc., etc. Next slide, please. So, my conclusion is that it has to include not only the merger of Islamic values, but also maybe other values as well. So a merger of religion, languages, and sciences is necessary. The use of internet, you have no choice. If you can't do it face-to-face in COVID era, and this will be going on for the next few years, we have to use the internet to focus to the very young and adolescent. Even though we have to use TikTok. You know, some people say TikTok may not be sesuai. We may have to have our own version of TikTok or Instagram to be able to send the messages. So the mindfulness in the life of the Muslim is very important because Allah is always watching me at all times. And as the sequences, we develop greater attention and care for our own actions, our thoughts, feelings, and inner states of being.
Okay.
As Allah has said, remember that God knows what is in your soul, and so be mindful of Him. Last slide, please. Yes. So remember, we can do this for people. And why? Because there are hadiths that say that every child is born in a state of nature, white as a piece of cloth, waiting to be patterned by his parents. And there are at least two ayat Quran that mentions about mind, and you can direct it to mindfulness. In Surah An-Anfal, indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, who do not use reason. And in Al-Ankabut, we see those words. There are the various situations which we set forth for the benefit of mankind, yet, except for the learned. So who are the learned? The learned are also those who are mindful and nobly try to grasp them. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions.
Many thanks, Yang Bahagia Professor Datuk Dr. Jafri, for providing us with a very interesting neuroscientific view on the issue of protecting or preservation of the mind. We shall now move on to our fourth panelist, Yang Bahagia Datuk Dr. Musa bin Muhammad Nordin, who is consultant pediatrician and neonatologist at the KPJ Damansara Specialist Hospital. Yang Bahagia Datuk, in the Malaysian context, what are the institutions, policies and measures already in place to preserve the progeny? And from your perspective, what are the challenges in terms of preserving the progeny facing Malaysia and what more needs to be done? Yang Bahagia Datuk Musa, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Can you hear me, saudara pengerusi?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see my slides?
Not at the moment. Okay, now we can see your slides.
Is it moving?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Okay. Alhamdulillah hamdan katsira wassalatu wassalamu ala qaidil ummah wa imamil mujahidin sayyidina Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam katsira wa nashhadu annahu qad ballagha risalah wa adda al-amanah wa nasaha al-ummah wa jihadi fillahi haqqa jihadi. Yang mulia saudara Dr. Sheikh selaku pengerusi majlis, yang berbahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji, distinguished panel of speakers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on Hifz an-Nas, the protection of progeny. I'm not sure how I was incorporated into this most distinguished forum because I am not an expert. I think the only reason I may have some insight into this topic was because I did a lot of research on IVF, on designer babies, on cloning. So, and that has a lot of impact on procreation, on progeny, on keturunan. So I think that's probably the reason. Now, my brief this morning is just 3. Pertama, I will give you a snapshot. This is a snapshot of the issues involved with keturunan, with progeny. Secondly, I will benchmark Malaysia against the rest of the world. It's important that whatever we do, we need to judge ourselves against the best in the world. And then finally, the way forward. So as I mentioned, this is a very intimidating subject. It is an extremely sensitive subject because if you look at a nasl, the protection of progeny, it means you're talking about extramarital sex. Very, very sensitive. You're talking about homosexuality, lesbianism, transgenders. You're talking about adultery, zina, protection of the honor of the family, establishing true lineage of our adopted children, of our orphans. Yeah, and then being fair, being equitable in a marriage relationship, premarital counseling. How Islam looks very, very poorly at divorce, but yet allows it to be amicably settled if it cannot be avoided. Yeah, very specific Quranic verse that relates to them. And then domestic abuse, child abuse, polygamy, very explosive. And of course, the beauty of life in a marriage, in a family. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ar-Rum, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Beautiful verse, you know, how He created spouses from amongst us so that we may find comfort, yeah, we may find compassion, rahmah, we may find mercy, we may find sakina, tranquility, beautiful in Surah Ar-Rum. But yet, this is the reality in Malaysia. It's very frightening. And just look at this, the sex and our teenage child. Among those surveyed, 13 to 17-year-olds, 7% already had sex. Look at that. Boys, 35% had sex before the age of 14. Girls, 27%. Look at this. Multiple partners in a sexual relationship. 21% in boys, 11% in girls. Pahang has the highest prevalence, 9.5%, lowest in wilayah. Look at that. Form 1, 9.3% prevalence of extramarital sex. Yeah. This is explosive, you know, it's extremely worrying. And look at this research paper. This was 2015, a review of teenage pregnancy in Malaysia. And this is the result. More than 19,000 births to teenage mothers were recorded each year between 2009 and 2011. And this teenage pregnancy, teenage births makes up 2% of all the births. Yeah, and yet, look at that. That means 45 teenage births every day. Yeah, young girls. And look at this reality. 35% of female youth believe they cannot get pregnant the first time they've had sex. Such is the understanding of sex at this age group. This is another worrying situation. How did you first learn about sex? This is from the parents. Only 6%. Where did they learn? From their pornography. And then the next largest is from friends. So if we don't intervene early, we don't address the situation, it can only go on the slippery slope towards what I can't even begin to imagine. Where do you first see or first learn how to use protection, condoms, birth control in sex? Again, pornography, 24%. 1 in every 4 boys and girls. Yeah. And then learning from online videos, online articles. This is another worrying situation. Rape cases from the year 2000 to 2017, right? It peaked around 2010. And now in 2017, 2018, or just under 3,000 a year, which is 6 rape cases per day. Aren't you horrified by these statistics? Isn't the government horrified by these statistics? Yeah, look at that. What is happening to our nation? 1,000 baby dumping from 2010 to 2019. And 64% of these babies died. What does that mean? 100 dumb babies every year. My hospital has got a baby hatch to save the lives of the baby. Itu pun orang marah. I'm trying to save these babies. They have got no alternatives. We've got 10 KPG hospitals having this. And I work very closely with orphan care. I am a pediatrician on call for orphan care that looks after these dumb babies or children in institution. Look at the state of marriage and divorce in Malaysia. This is the problem statement. 2018, 206,000 marriages. The number of divorces, 50,000. 25%. Yeah. And who are divorcing? Look at that. In 2017, 1.6 per 1,000 were, for Malaysia, Muslims 2 per 1,000, double the non-Muslim. We are supposed to be God-fearing, the Khaira Ummah. We are not displaying these exemplary characteristics. Look at 2018, about the same, 2 per 1,000, double that of our non-Muslim Malaysian. This is bad news. What is the Jabatan Agama Islam doing about this? What is the government of Malaysia doing about this? The statistics are staring at us. Look at domestic violence. We talked just now about jambatan rasa dan kasih sayang, mawadah mawadah kan? The bridge of love, sakina, tranquility, but yet the husbands are bashing their wives who are supposed to be their loved ones. 15 per day. This is disastrous. So, where does Malaysia benchmark itself? Where are we? And there are many benchmarks. I'm just taking one that I feel very, very comfortable, and I think it embraces the Maqasid Sharia. And this is the program from the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Look at that. This is the concept of Human Development Index. It's very shumulia. It is very comprehensive. It is very holistic. Why do I say so? Look at the dimensions. Long and healthy life. This is what was spoken by Prof. Latif. This was also what was spoken by the first speaker. Yeah, long and healthy life. And how do we judge them? We look at life expectancy at birth. Indicate what is the dimension? The life expectancy index. And this is what Prof. Jeffrey spoke about: knowledge, hifz al-aqal, knowledge, expected years of schooling. You need to have tangible endpoints, yeah, tangible numbers, yeah. Then we can judge. Then we can benchmark ourselves with the other 119 nations in the world. Mean years of schooling. So you get a education index. And then, of course, the next speaker will talk about hifz al-mal. This is property, a decent standard of living. We look at the GNI, Gini, right? The GNI index. And then a composite of this, you get what's known as the Human Development Index, HDI, yeah? And where is Malaysia? Malaysia, unfortunately, is at number 62. Our HDI value is 0.8, the highest being 1.0. Norway leads the league, number 1. And look at our life expectancy at birth, 76 years. This is actually SDG number 3, Sustainable Development Goals of the World Health Organization. Expected years of schooling, this is education, hifz al-aqal, 13.7. Mean years of schooling, 10.4. Again, part of the SDG. And our GNI is 27 billion USD. Now, how have we progressed? We were 0.64 in 1990, ranked around 62. And then we've improved 0.7, 0.77, 0.79. Now we are at 0.81. And the increase is very minimal, 0.8. Yeah, we are still in the very high human development. 67 Seychelles and below are high human development. And this is where, as I mentioned to you, Norway is stopped there, right? And then Ireland, Switzerland, Hong Kong, these are non-Muslim nations. We are supposed to be Khaira Ummah. We are supposed to be the benchmark, yet we are at number 62. Iceland, Germany, Sweden, Australia, Netherlands, Denmark, Finland. The closest ASEAN country is Singapore at number 11. Now you look at Hifz al-Nasl, very specifically to issues of women, children, family, men, yeah? Reproduction. Look at that. Reproduction, health and family planning. This is Malaysia. We're actually very good, yeah, in terms of the health of our women. 97.2 antenatal care coverage, proportion of births attended by skilled health personnel, very good. Our health is one of the best in the world. No one Malaysia is 5 kilometers away from a health center. Contraception, low, 52%. You see, a lot of blanks here. What are the blanks? Unmet needs for family planning. Women married by age 18. This is a big issue. Child marriage, prevalence of female genital mutilation, no data. Violence against women. I showed you the data. Why aren't we presenting the data to the world? Yeah? Violence against intimate partner, non-intimate partner. And then we look at share of graduates, women in science, technology, yeah, mathematics, only 26%, right? Compared to, share of graduates in tertiary education, yeah, 34%. And then share of employment in senior and middle management, tak ada data, probably less than 30%, right? And then look at this, women with accountant, this is financial independence, not bad, yeah, 82%, right? And then finally, mandatory paid leave, we are about 60 days, yeah? So this gives us an idea where we are when we compare ourselves with the other countries in the world. And then this is looking at gender equality, because we talk about relationship between men and women, but quite obviously, there is gender bias. The women is the lower, the inferior partner in the relationship. Yeah. Maternal mortality 29 deaths per 100,000. Adolescent birth rate tinggi ni 13.4. Share of seats in the parliament. There you are, only 15%. You compare that, Costa Rica has got 45%. Yeah, just above us. Yeah. This is with secondary education, women 72%, men 76%, always favoring the boys, always favoring the male sex. And look at that. Workforce, women only 50%, men 77%. There is definitely gender imbalance in the workforce. So what is the way forward? Very quickly, I don't have the solutions. You know, we have been at it for a long time, but I can tell you some basic parameters. One, there must be political and religious leadership. I am not seeing it. This is a frank opinion in our leaders. There is neither good political governance, neither is there good religious governance. It was the daughter of Shuaib who told the father, "Father, inna khaira man istajartal qawiyul amin." one of the women, one of the daughters of Shuaib, Nabi Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam said, oh my father, hire him, Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Indeed, the best one you can hire is the strong and the trustworthy. Or you'll Amin. And Amin, if you ask, you do, I think Forbes magazine did a survey of all the top CEOs of the 500 companies, top companies in the world. What was their number one criteria? Integrity. That is trustworthiness. Al-Amin. Integrity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is hablum min Allah, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In terms of your iman, your Islam, your ihsan, and your taqwa. And then your relationship with mankind. Hablum minan nas. How responsible we are, how just we are, how accountable we are, and what is our level of integrity. Very clear, but unfortunately an unmet criteria. Because they do not walk the talk. They do too much talk, very, very little walking the talk. And this is a crime. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu lima taqulu ma la taf'alun. Kabura maqtan innallahi an taqulu ma la taf'alun. Oh believers, why do you say that you do not do? How despicable it is in the sight of Allah that you say what you do not do. You see, because NGOs, NGIs, non-government institutions, the public, the opposition, all have proposed a lot of solutions. They are part of the solutions, but little have been implemented. Why? Because there is no political will in the political leadership. There is no political will in the religious governance. And worse still, they abuse religion for their political ends. This is what I call patriarchal religious fervor. Men ahead of women, very little concern for the lesser sex, for our ladies, for our children. Yeah, you can see this even at display in the Jabatan Agama Islam in the various states in Malaysia. Specific to COVID, we've got here 791 deaths. We've got about 222,000 cases. Yeah, this is worrying. And this is where you see the interaction, the close relationship, the intimacy between the protection of lives, the protection of nasal progeny, and the protection of property. Because if there's no protection of life, don't talk about progeny, don't talk about procreation, don't talk about babies. And that is why, as Prof. Latif has emphasized, it is our ibadah. It is not just an obligation, it is our obligation to Allah and to hablum minan nas, to humanity, for us to observe the SOPs, the masking, the distancing, clear hygiene, the 3 C's, the 3 W's, and for the Ministry of Health to make sure that they get their FTTIS correct. I think it is now slow. I think it is now flawed. That's why, despite the MCO, despite the emergency ordinance, we are not squashing the number of cases. Why? Because the back to basics of FTTIS is flawed. It is a slow response. It should be a rapid response. Find, test, trace, isolate, and support. And next is vaccines, as emphasized by Prof. Latif. Vaccine is not the panacea. It is not the cure. We must get the SOPs right. We must get the rapid response FTTIS right. They work together. They are integral to each other. And only by this, we can protect lives, we can protect livelihoods. Yeah. And this is an issue I think the Jabatan Agama Islam in all the states needs to get their act right. They have to stop moral policing. What happens in the 4 corners of the house is their responsibility amongst themselves and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have got no business to enter the doors of these families. Because it is stated in the Quran. The Quran repudiates this act of spying and backbiting. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, do not spy on each other behind their backs. Do not enter other houses. You jangan masuk rumah orang except your own without first asking permission. You barge in, yeah, into other people's home. Is this the Islamic way of doing things? Yeah. And if you are asked to go away, turn your backs, for this is proper for you. This is from the Quran. It is not from me, not from any NGOs. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you judge among the people, do so fairly. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminded all the Jabatan Agama Islam, do not go out and search for the fault of others. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you hide, if you tutupkan kemaluan orang, salah orang, insyaAllah, Allah will close your bad deeds in the hereafter. This specific hadith is from Sunan Al-Dawud. So there are many issues. It's not possible to go one by one, but enough to say we got issues with child marriage, what we need to know and what we need to do. Look at this census. What do people think of Malaysians? What do Malaysians think of child marriage? Under 18, no. Yes, 12%. Not sure, 17%. What are the consequences of marriage under 18? Health risks, teenage pregnancy, violence at home, drop out of school. No future. What we hope the authorities will do. So, the proposals are there, but I'm not sure the Jabatan Agama is listening. I'm not sure the religious authorities are listening. I'm not sure the government is listening. And the importance of sex education. You saw the knowledge of our children with regards to sex. Yeah. This is a girl who's delivered a child out of marriage, and this is what it might end up in the bushes, in the toilets, 100 every year. This is a human tragedy. And what is this? Why is this happening in Malaysia? Yeah, this is wife battering. This is domestic violence, and it is getting worse with the lockdown. Tambah lagi another 2 weeks of lockdown, which in my opinion is not based on good science. It is based on political science. Child abuse. You know, when I was a pediatrician in Johor, sexual abuse was the highest, even worse than physical abuse in Johor. The highest then. That was in the 1990s. Look at that poor child. How can we ever allow fathers, uncles, grandfathers to do this to our little children? This is a human tragedy. Yeah. And now with the pandemic, this is what's happened. We've never had a negative until 2020 when we suffered the COVID pandemic. The annual change in the Human Development Index. So I think I've not given you solutions. If anything, I've given you problems, but I rest assured there are solutions to the problem. It has been submitted by non-governmental institutions, NGOs, but please listen. So I will close by quoting one of our pioneer scholars, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, when he mentioned about Maqasid Sharia. He said, the principles and the basis of the Sharia concerning the rulings and human interests in this life and the hereafter are all based on justice, grace, human good, and wisdom. Every situation which drifts from justice to tyranny, which moves from grace to hardship, which moves from goodness to corruption, which moves from wisdom to absurdity, has nothing to do with the Maqasid Sharia, even if this is presented through allegorical interpretation, ta'wil. For the Sharia is God's justice amongst his servant. The Sharia is God's grace amongst his creatures. It's God's shadow on his earth and God's wisdom which prove his own existence as well. And this is the best evidence, the authenticity of his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Yang Bahagia Datuk Dr. Musa, for the thought-provoking inputs pertaining to the preservation of progeny or lineage. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our fifth principle, which is preservation of property. Yang Amat Bahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji earlier has highlighted a number of concerns pertaining to the issue of protecting and preserving property. As such, I would like to move on to our fifth panelist, Associate Professor Dr. Aznan bin Hassan from the Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, International Islamic University of Malaysia, to solicit his views on this matter. Dr. Aznan, in the Malaysian context, what are the institutions, policies, schemes, and instruments that were utilized to preserve property in facing a disruption such as a global pandemic? And are these initiatives enough? And if not, what more needs to be implemented? Also, what are the ways to increase the value of property and wealth owned by Muslims in the country, especially in the light of disruptions and crisis? Associate Professor Dr. Aznan, the floor is now yours. Sorry, Dr. Aznan, we cannot hear you. Can you please unmute?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahu wa nasaru wa wala. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Thank you very much Tuan Moderator, Dr. Mak Syed Saifuddin Muhammad Saleh, Yang Berbahagia Tuan Ahmad Sarji Abdul Hamid, Chairman of IKIM, dear panelists, participants, observers, thank you very much IKIM for inviting me to share my thought on this particular important topic, which combine two most important terms as a Muslim. The first one is the Maqasidic Sharia, and the other one is Khaira Ummah. There are two big terms which are difficult for the panelists to give justice to the topic, to elaborate on many things. Many of us try to give and to raise questions and problems. I mean, more than try to give answer to that. I believe that perhaps more time needed for us to elaborate on the solution, on what we should go, what the government should do, what the society should do, what individuals should do moving forward. Question posed to me: what are the instruments, policies, schemes that are in place for us to protect and to preserve the economics and the wealth, especially during the time of COVID that we are facing? If you go on the chain of the maqasid, the protection of property, the protection of wealth come last after all those religion, life, intellect, progeny, or posterity, and come wealth. However, if we go to Ibn Ashur, for example, when he talked about maqasid al-sharia, he said that at all time we cannot isolate one maqsad from the other. Means that at the end of the day, even though we have the scheme of priority that we have the first one, religion and everything, at the end of the day, all those maqasid, all those purpose of the sharia must be looked in what we call in holistic, integrating and synergizing one another to ensure the continuation and the benefit for human life. Mr. Moderator put to me a very important issue. Let me start by saying that COVID-19 pandemic has come as a big challenge for everybody. What has started as just health crisis has turned out to be a crisis for almost everything, including also economic, as businesses had to suffer due to a lot of 2 times MCOs already now, and also limited business opportunities during the pandemic. And the closure of certain business sectors and limitation on some others has led to domino effects on economics, not only at the national level, not only international level, but more on the family and even at individual level. A lot of us, many of the Malaysian, many of the people lost their work, lost their job, lost their source of life in terms of funding and everything. Hence, right policies, right schemes, right instruments need to be devised and structured to ensure sustainability and preservation of wealth and economic well-being of our society, people, and also nation as a whole. That's the first point that I would like to raise for that matter. The second point is that at the same time, the government must also strike the right balance and give the right dose in treating this situation. Okay, Datuk Sahibul Samah, Datuk talk about the protection of religion, which is very important. Others talk about progeny, others talk about life, intellect, and wealth also come as one of the balance that we need to put to ensure that religion can be protected, life can be protected, progeny can be protected, but for the continuity of human life, source of life, one of things is food, drink, shelter, all those will come with the right economic policy that the government has. Okay, so whatever government in this situation will have a very difficult situation, and we need to balance between protecting the life and also preserving the economy. I mean, we can have two very extreme. On one extreme, we continue with everything lockdown, MCOs, don't allow for everything. Yes, of course, in that sense, that can enhance the protection of life, but that can be very much detrimental to the economics. When it can be on the other side of the coin, where we allow for everything as usual, economy as usual, no nothing, that will help for economy, but on the other hand, that will be detrimental on the other side. So striking the right balance between protecting life and other things and also preserving the economic well-being is a thing that, in my opinion, a very challenging task indeed. That's the second point. The third point is that what are the policies, what are the schemes and instruments that has been devised by the government to weathering down the effect of this pandemic on our economy? I think we can look at it from various perspectives. We can look from the business point of view. We can look from the what we call a government point of view. We can look from individual point of view. We can look from economic, fiscal, and monetary policies point of view. And it's very difficult for me to cover everything in this very short span of time. Hence, I would like to talk about some of the initiatives that has been taken by the government and whether this is enough or not, and what should be done more in terms of incorporating all the necessary things to ensure the preservation of economics and also consequently and other things as well. The first one is that we can look from some of these policies and assistance I put in short form. The first one is a direct financial assistance, direct to the targeted individual and businesses, which came in several phases. The second one is the moratorium. You can see moratorium on the first 6 months when we have the first MCOs, the automatic 6-month moratorium. Now we are on what we call targeted repayment assistance program, where the banking sector has to identify who are their clients that are affected and how for them to treat, and they have to report to Bank Negara from time to time to ensure that the moratorium is only given to the targeted individuals that are really affected. We have EPF withdrawal with certain conditions. Third one, we have the fund facilitation to help businesses to recover. This is another thing which I think also important. Among the most important one is various fund parked within Bank Negara Malaysia. You have the Bank Negara Malaysia Special Relief Fund, Targeted Relief and Recovery Facility, we call TRRF, 2 billion high-tech facility. We have Micro Enterprises Facility, 410 million. We have like any other funds, for example, all economic sectors, AES facility, agro-food, and a lot of facilitation by the government via Bank Negara and other entities as well, for the purpose of helping the business to preserve in this particular point of time. It's very difficult for many businesses to be as usual before a pandemic, but in this particular time, people always say that if you can maintain and you can sustain, you are good enough when you are having a big financial problem that we are having now. Okay, that's the third one. The first one is, I think this one government need to do more. Facilitation of new norms and economic activities. How for us to be able to facilitate for example, digital online businesses, creating more platform, how for us to have a more robust data, artificial intelligence, internet, e-commerce, for example, that can allow for business to continue. I have one friend, I mentioned got one friend, he used to do kenduri. Every kenduri he will do what we call they buka stall ice cream. So anybody who want to do kenduri, for example, will invite him to open stall. They pay him one scope, for example, $1, RM1, for example. Okay, so he suffered because now no kenduri, no nothing. So what he did is that with the situation that he has, he turned it into opportunities. What he does instead of doing kenduri, for example, now he sell ice cream online. I bought from him last week. He mentioned to me that very encouraging. At least a day he got 1,500 up to 2,000 a day selling ice cream online. So he based in around this area, Kajang, Bangi, and this area. So how for us to ensure that government putting more effort to facilitate more transaction, more economic activities based on new norm on online and so forth and so on. That's other thing that we need to do. Some other banks are also helping. For example, Maybank put sama-sama local, some other things put out there. But I think the best facilities is the facility that can be facilitated by the government entity to ensure that whatever that people want to do on their business, that can be done in a more what we call a structured manner. That's the fourth one. The fifth one is that this is another area that we have to look at preservation of economy and life as well. Pelindungan and takaful. Government put a proposal for, they call pelindungan tenang, protection for B40. They give $50 vouchers that will be given to eligible B40 recipient. I think this need to be widened further, not only for B40, but also for other people as well. How for us to be able to facilitate for a more takaful coverage on this particular point of time. Takaful coverage in terms of health and all those situations, that's the fifth one. Okay, so the latest one, government, the PM announced for the 8th budget of what they call Permai, on the 18th of January 2021, amounting to 15 billion. So these are some of the initiatives done by the government so far to help preservation of economies, and at the same time fostering and also ensuring that other segments of the maqasid are also considered and protected. Is this enough? A big question. Three things put to me. The first one is that what are the initiative, instrument, and everything. I've answered on that matter in summaries, of course. The other one is this enough? This is a very difficult question to answer. You can look at it from various angles. If you are from the government side, you have to balance between your fiscal policies, fiscal capabilities, and also helping people. From people side, on political side, of course, you want to have more and more. Okay, so various people will always put their own perspective to answer this. If you ask me personally, I believe, in my opinion, government should give more. In terms of what are the help, assistance that they can give to people, I believe they need to put more to the people. Of course, they will have to look into the fiscal policies, their monetary policies, their fiscal capabilities, but I still believe that we still have rooms to give more to the people, and we still have the fiscal possibilities and capabilities for us to maneuver, for us to be able to give more to the people. This is my humble opinion. Of course, this will need to be studied, to be looked into carefully before we decide on that. But still, based on the data and everything that we have, I believe that we still have room for us to give more for the people. Okay, so this is my point of view. I may be wrong, but in my opinion, financial assistance should be given more to the people these days. With the MCOs that we have a second part, now MCOs, even though the business open and everything, we cannot deny that people are still suffering. And I believe more assistance are needed for us to give to the people to ensure that they can sustain, not to have a very luxurious life. Now people are not talking about luxury anymore. People are talking about sustainability. How for us to sustain. People cut in a lot of things, yet we see people losing job. They don't have many things to support their family. This is the time when we need to help more not only individual, but also some small businesses, SMEs, and so forth and so on, micro businesses, for example, for them to be able to sustain and to continue earning something to support their family. One more thing also, which I think we need to look into as well, excuse me, is on what classically we call third sector funding. Okay. Perhaps Sahibul Samaha can help me on this. We have zakat giving a very good musa'adah and a lot of help coming from third sector, which is zakat. I believe that we have to restructure more on the wakaf. So Ibu Samaha mentioned about, yes, people are suffering, but there are people who are less affected. And these people, perhaps they have the capabilities to still assist and help others. Perhaps if we structure more in terms of the third sector funding, wakaf, for example, to help people on this particular point of time, I believe that we can done more. That third sector's funding classically help a lot in terms of sustaining the people. If you look at the Ottoman Empire's time, you look at the Abbasid time, zakat and wakaf played a very important role in terms of sustaining people. One time in Turkey, they mentioned that at least half of the funding of the society was done via third sector, which is wakaf. So government has less what we call contribution in that manner because of wakaf playing well. Of course, when it comes to wakaf, people talk about a lot of transparency, people are talking about a lot of what we call information and everything. Of course, I think we have to manage on that to make people believe that our wakaf is maintained and administrated in the best practices that we do. Okay, and more seriously, in my opinion, the time has come for the government to consider seriously into the practice of Islamic economics more holistically. We are talking about Maqasidic Sharia. We are talking about Khaira Ummah. We have to understand that the Maqasidic Sharia will not be able to surface, to be implemented if we forget to look at the implementation of Islamic economics in totality. The way we are doing now is that we are still largely based on conventional with certain Islamic input here and there. This need to be revised. We need to have a more holistic application of Islamic economy. The time has come. The conventional finance has again and again failed us. What's wrong for us to now consider implementing the holistic point of view of Islamic economics? Okay, what are the way forward for us to increase the value of property wealth by the Muslim in this country in the light of the disruptive and crisis? Okay, I think the occurrence of the pandemic has led many of us to rethink our position and financial position. We have to relook into our position and financial position from both sides, from the way we accumulate the wealth and also from our spending of wealth and preservation of wealth. What should be done in the light of current disruption and crisis? A lot of things, perhaps I put some of the points in point form for us to consider for our discussion further as this what we call consultation. The first one is that government and people has to look into what are the, how to create new mechanism to do business, new marketing, new delivery process, and virtual and so forth and so on to ensure that the supply chain will continue. That's the first one. Second one is that we have to remain objective and focus on our personal economics. Wise spending, and we have to manage our cash flow well. Okay, how for us to ensure that we don't lose in the pandemic. We lost priority, we lost what to do. The online transaction increased a lot. I have no data on what are the things bought on online, for example. Whether they are things that is under category of daruriyat, hajiyat, or tahsiniyat. But I really hope that Muslim, we don't lose in terms of putting the priority for our life for that matter. That's the second one. The third one is that we have to review our emergency fund. We have to ensure that we have enough fund to weathering this particular pandemic. We have a lot of scam now. People got some money, they are desperate to double and to increase their money, and the scam are also everywhere. People use my name, my picture sometimes for the purpose of soliciting fund for non-good reason, scam for example, and Muslim has to be able to understand and avoid this particular scam, not just Macau scam, a lot of scam. They have trading share scam and a lot of things that we need to ensure. And if you get assistance from the government, we have to optimize the assistance that we get. How for us to be able to make Muslim to understand how for them to optimize the assistance that they get from the government, and how for them to diversify their investment avenue to ensure that they are well protected in terms of wealth accumulation and wealth preservation when it comes of time COVID for that matter. Last but not least, which is also important, I believe that the government has to ensure that for the sustainability of Muslim economics, the supply chain of the Muslim economy shall be created. All this while, Muslims are not sustainable in so many ways because of we are able to preserve our supply chain in terms of business capabilities and everything. Perhaps with some fund of the government, we can prioritize into supply chain of certain areas that allow us to sustain economically. I believe these are some of the things which we should look into thoroughly, try to implement for the sake of watering down the pandemic and preserving our economy and our well-being, not only on the national level, but also on the society level, family level, and also on individual level to ensure that we can sustain and preserve property within the Maqasid Sharia on the Maqas Hifzul Mal. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Azdan, for shedding light on the issue of preservation of property. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from 5 panelists on the 5 principles of Maqasid Syariah. Now we will move on to our 6th panelist, Ustazah Nur Safina binti Zainal, who is Director, Maqasid Syariah Division, Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, or JAKIM. Ustazah Nur Safina, there have been many efforts undertaken by JAKIM in promoting the understanding of Maqasid Syariah. How is the Maqasid applicable in forming Khaira Ummah in the context of Malaysia, in view of the issues highlighted by Yang Amat Bahagia Dr. Ahmad Sarji, and also during times of disruptions and crisis? In your opinion, should we formulate indicators or sub-indicators in respect of the applicability of each principle of Maqasid in order to make assessment on the state of the Khaira Ummah in Malaysia? Dengan segala hormatnya, dipersilakan Ustazah Nur Safina.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Terima kasih kepada Tuan Moderator Dr. Syekh Syafuddin dan Tuan Ahmad Sarji selaku pengurusi kepada IKIM, Dr. Azizan selaku Ketua Pengarah kepada IKIM, dan semua panelis yang saya hormati sekalian. Apa yang saya lihat daripada pembentangan daripada 5 panelis tadi, semua kita bercakap mungkin tentang permasalahan yang berlaku dalam pentadbiran negara kita, dan saya mohon izin kepada Tuan Moderator untuk saya bercakap dalam bahasa kebangsaan kita. Saya bercakap dalam bahasa Melayu. Mungkin untuk memudahkan lagi lah saya memperjelaskan apa yang kita laksanakan sekarang ini. Dan daripada apa yang kita dengar daripada awal hingga ke Prof. Dr. Aznan tadi, saya melihat apa yang sedang berlaku dalam situasi dunia sekarang ini. Saya nampak apa yang berlaku ialah kita sekarang berhadapan dengan situasi satu yang dinamakan sebagai excellent without soul. Maknanya kita hidup di dalam kecemerlangan, kemajuan, tetapi kita hilang nilai-nilai ruhiyah, nilai-nilai spiritual yang perlu ada dalam pembangunan insan kita. Itu yang saya nampak lah. Dan bila ini yang berlaku, kita sebenarnya mencari sesuatu, apakah yang boleh membentuk negara kita sesuai dengan apa yang kita bincangkan pada hari ini, iaitu Maqasidic framework for the formation of Khaira Ummah. Jadi kita mencari suatu framework bagaimana kita nak membentuk sebuah negara dengan pembangunan insan yang di dalamnya itu boleh melahirkan sebagai Khaira Ummah yang kita tengok, kita baca dalam ayat Quran surah Al-Imran itu Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnas litamuruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. Itu 3 perkara penting yang kita nampak ada dalam ayat itu telah memberi garis panduan yang terbaik untuk kita ikut. Tetapi apa yang berlaku pada hari ini yang saya lihat ialah itu daripada pemerhatian kami di bahagian Maqasid Syariah, kita gagal untuk menterjemahkannya kerana kegagalan kita untuk berfikir, untuk kita meletakkan satu minda yang boleh mengurus permasalahan yang berlaku. Itu yang saya nampak. Doktor boleh dengar ke?
Ya, teruskan Ustazah.
Doktor boleh dengar ya? Itu yang berlaku sekarang ni. Dan daripada ayat Al-Quran dalam surah saya ingat dalam Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, maksud wa ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alamin, dalam ayat ini pun ada dijelaskan sebenarnya di dalam ayat ini rahmatan lil alamin. Jadi perkataan rahmatan lil alamin itu merupakan satu intipati yang khusus, elemen khusus yang terkandung dalam maqasid syariah juga. Dan bagaimana kita nak menterjemahkan sebenarnya elemen maslahah itu dalam pentadbiran kita. Itu yang berlaku. Saya ingat apa yang berlaku yang kita perlu fikirkan hari ini ialah bagaimana kita nak mengurus, bagaimana kita nak mentadbir, bagaimana kita nak membangunkan insan-insan, mengurus sistem, mengurus maklumat, mengurus data, mengurus permasalahan berlaku dalam negara kita ini. Dan hari ini kita berbincang, kita nak menggunakan maqasid syariah itu sebagai framework untuk kita mengurus semua permasalahan yang berlaku. Itu yang saya lihat sangat cantiklah untuk kita melihat sebenarnya dalam konteks maqasid syariah. Semua permasalahan berlaku ini kita akan uruskan dalam konteks maqasid syariah. Okey, saya masuk kepada slide. Saya ada persediakan juga slide sikit ni. Saya tak nampak. Boleh nampak ke slide saya?
Buat masa tak nampak Ustazah.
Tak nampak slide?
Tak nampak.
Okey. Sekejap aku cari. Slide tak nampak Doktor?
Tak nampak.
Tak nampak. Slide tak nampak. Slide. Boleh. Okay, Doktor, boleh nampak ke?
Sekarang nampak.
Okey. Ini yang slide pertama yang saya tunjukkan ialah bagaimana peranan maqasid syariah sekarang yang kita laksanakan sebenarnya dalam takbir urus, dalam takbiran negara kita yang kita telah pun gunakan sebenarnya maqasid syariah ini dalam kita mengeluarkan hukum hakam. Jadi dalam permasalahan dan isu-isu yang berlaku yang berkait dengan pelbagai bidang sebenarnya, dalam bidang politik, sosial, ekonomi, kesihatan, perubatan dan sebagainya, dan kita mengeluarkan hukum dan fatwa, juga kita berlandaskan kepada maqasid syariah. Dan juga dalam pentadbiran negara. Jadi mungkin kita sebelum ini kita jarang mendengar bagaimana maqasid syariah ini kita gunakan dalam pentadbiran negara. Sebenarnya maqasid syariah ini sangat berperanan, sangat penting dalam bagaimana kita nak menguruskan pentadbiran negara kita, kerana dalam bagaimana keupayaan kita nak mengurus dan mentadbir itulah yang akan menentukan sebenarnya bagaimana kita nak mencorakkan Khaira Ummah yang kita nak. Itu dalam takbir urus negara. Dan juga kita juga kena ingat dalam maqasid syariah ini juga ia melibatkan kehidupan kita. Jadi maqasid syariah ini yang kita nak gunakan, iaitu maqasid syariah dalam mengurus kehidupan kita daripada dalam kandungan lagi sebenarnya, dalam kandungan lagi macam doktor sebut tadi, dalam kandungan lagi kita membentuk anak-anak kita daripada sebelum lahir hingga lahir dan sehingga kita balik ke alam kubur balik. Jadi pengurusan kehidupan kita daripada awal hingga ke akhir adalah dalam konteks maqasid syariah. Dan juga bagaimana kita mengurus isu-isu sosial yang berlaku dalam pentadbiran negara kita. Banyak tadi bangkitkan tentang permasalahan anak wanita yang berlaku, pengukuran kandungan dan pelbagai. Dan ini juga sebenarnya berkait dengan bagaimana kita nak menggunakan framework maqasid syariah ini untuk kita mengurus isu-isu sosial yang berlaku dalam pentadbiran negara kita. Dan yang juga berkaitan juga dengan maqasid syariah juga adalah bagaimana kita nak menguruskan pentadbiran dalam aspek keselamatan, dalam aspek pertahanan, keamanan, kerana kalau kita gagal membentuk keamanan, mewujudkan keamanan dalam pentadbiran negara kita, kita tak akan mampu untuk menjaga agama, kita tidak akan mampu untuk menjaga akal, keturunan dan juga harta. Tidak ada keamanan, kita tak boleh nak wujudkan sekolah pun, kita tak boleh nak bina masjid pun. Jadi peranan penting maqasid syariah dalam menjaga aspek keselamatan, iaitu menjaga nyawa. Jadi ini beberapa part yang saya boleh tunjukkan bagaimana pentingnya maqasid syariah ini dalam kita mengurus tadbir negara kita. Dua elemen penting yang saya nampak dalam kita membincangkan isu tajuk kita pada hari ini, iaitu Maqasidic Framework for the Formation of Khaira Ummah, ialah yang pertamanya bagaimana kita nak mengurus, dan yang keduanya ialah bagaimana kita nak membangunkan insaniyatul insan yang kita nak bangunkan di negara kita ini. Mungkin perjalanannya agak panjang, mesti panjang. Bukannya benda yang mudah untuk kita melahirkan Khaira Ummah. Dan tadi kita juga ada sebut pelbagai indeks yang diwujudkan untuk mengukur sejauh mana sesebuah negara itu berjaya membangunkan negara. Seperti HDI tadi, HDI Human Development Index yang dibangunkan oleh UNDP. Dan bagaimana pengukuran yang dibuat, itu dia melihat dari segi long and healthy life, being knowledgeable, have a decent standard of living. Dia tengok part-part tu. Tetapi tiga perkara yang dilihat itu adakah memenuhi dengan ayat Quran tadi, watu minu nabillah itu. Jadi kita melihat kita sebolehnya kita nak memasukkan sekali watu minu nabillah itu di dalam pengukuran yang kita buat, elemen-elemen angle yang kita nak buat ukuran dalam usaha kita nak form ada Khaira Ummah itu. Dan satu lagi indeks yang menarik juga untuk kita lihat, iaitu Islamicity Index. Islamicity Index ni dibangunkan oleh kalau tak silap saya, oleh Hussein Askari. Dan ia merupakan satu observation untuk melihat, dia kata Western countries better reflect Islamic institution than do countries that profess Islam. Jadi dia kata, Muhammad Abduh berkata, I went to the West and saw Islam, but no Muslim. I got back to the East and saw Muslim but no Islam. Jadi di situ pertimbangan, adakah pertimbangan itu yang kita nak lihat untuk kita mengatakan bahawa di situ lahirnya Khaira Ummah. Itu persoalan-persoalan yang kita kena lihat, dan saya rasa sudah sampai masanya kita bukan lagi berfikir di luar kotak, tetapi kita thinking in a new box. Kita berfikir dalam satu kotak yang baru, bagaimana kita nak form Khaira Ummah itu dalam konteks kita, dalam kita menggunakan kerangka maqasid syariah tadi. Dan perkara yang penting juga dalam kita nak form Khaira Ummah ini, yang saya sebut tadi daripada awal, ialah tentang pengurusan pentadbiran dan juga pembangunan insan. Dalam mengurus pembangunan insan dan juga mengurus tadbir negara, perkara yang paling penting ialah leadership, management and leadership. Leadership sangat penting, dan apa yang di dalam Islam pun telah menyatakan bahawa tentang kaedah al-awlawiyat, fiqh al-awlawiyat, dan di dalam term-term barat juga telah disebut, iaitu berkaitan dengan putting first thing first. Putting first thing first. Jadi kita nak lihat apa yang utama yang untuk kita laksanakan. Dan dalam maqasid syariah juga kita ada daruriyat, hajiyat, tahsiniyat. Jadi apa yang penting untuk kita lihat dalam konteks hari ini, pentadbiran di negara kita perlu lihat kepada daruriyat terlebih dahulu. Dan kita cuba kurangkan hajiyat dan tahsiniyat itu. Dan lebih-lebih lagi yang berkait dengan tahsiniyat, kita utamakan dulu yang daruriyat. Jadi kaedah dalam maqasid syariah dah ada, dalam usul fiqh pun dah ada, dan dalam frasa-frasa bahasa Inggeris pun disebut putting first thing first ini. Semuanya berkaitan dengan effective management. Jadi effective management ini ialah bagaimana leadership decide what first thing are. Jadi apa yang leadership nak buat yang pertamanya dalam konteks kita menghadapi COVID sekarang ini. Jadi what are the first thing are? Apa yang kita nak dahulukan? Nak menjaga agama, nak menjaga nyawa, jaga akal, keturunan dan harta. Jadi itu step-step yang sebagai seorang pentadbir, sama ada pentadbir di peringkat bawahan, di peringkat tengahan atau peringkat atasan, perlu memikirkan aulawiyat itu, dan step-step itu terkandung dalam maqasid syariah yang kita sebutkan sebagai maslahah. Jadi ini yang sangat utama, elemen utama yang terkandung dalam maqasid syariah iaitulah maslahah. Jadi pertimbangan dalam mengurus kehidupan. Jadi bagaimana kita nak mengurus kehidupan, dacing ini akan menentukan sama ada kita memihak kepada maslahah atau kita nak cenderung kepada mafsadah, atau banyak lagi mafsadahnya atau kurang maslahahnya. Itu adalah pertimbangan-pertimbangan yang perlu dibuat oleh kepimpinan, pentadbiran. Orang yang memimpin itu, leadership selaku pemimpin yang akan menentukan hala tuju sebuah negara. Jadi pemikiran yang akan digunakan ialah perlu menggunakan pemikiran berasaskan maqasid syariah. Yang saya namakan di bahagian maqasid, kita wujudkan satu terms iaitu minda maqasid syariah. Dan inilah yang saya cuba nak highlightkan, iaitu minda maqasid syariah yang kita banyak permasalahan berlaku, banyak isu yang berlaku dalam negara kita, sama ada di peringkat individu, di peringkat masyarakat, organisasi atau negara. Kalau sekiranya kita tahu dan faham apa itu maksudnya maqasid syariah itu, alangkah baiknya. Itu yang saya rasa kita kita kena move forward sekarang. Kita kena bawa agenda maqasid syariah ini dalam konteks yang semua lapisan masyarakat boleh memahaminya dengan jelas. Dan kita perlu berfikir dalam konteks maqasid syariah itu. Dan kita tidak boleh lagi sebenarnya bercakap tentang konsep saja. Kalau kita masih lagi duduk di tahap bercakap tentang konsep dan kita tidak menjejak ke bumi, permasalahan berlaku, jadi konsep itu tidak akan turun ke bumi dan kita tidak akan mampu untuk melaksanakan dan menyelesaikan apa juga permasalahan. Dan saya nampak itulah yang sangat sesuai kita bawa dalam konteks hari ini. Dan dalam konteks hari ini juga kalau yang bagi Datuk, tuan-tuan dan puan sekalian melihat bagaimana kerajaan menangani isu COVID juga adalah sangat berkait rapat dengan maqasid syariah yang kita laksanakan dalam hari ini. Okey. Saya pergi yang seterusnya, iaitu ini berkait dengan minda maqasid. Dan ini juga berkait dengan minda maqasid. Bagaimana kita nak mengurus kehidupan kita dengan menggunakan minda maqasid ini. Dan suka juga saya nak menyentuh sikit tentang apa sebenarnya kepentingan. Saya pergi dulu kepada apa kepentingan maqasid syariah ini. Kenapa kita nak menggunakan minda maqasid syariah ini dalam mengurus diri dan organisasi. Dan banyak sebenarnya term-term, banyak sebenarnya yang berbentuk satu doktrin ataupun yang dibawa oleh pemikir-pemikir barat sebelum ini. Dan kalau tuan-tuan pernah lihat kepada manajemen by objektif yang dibawa oleh Peter Drucker, dia juga bercakap tentang pengurusan. Jadi pengurusan yang dibawa ialah untuk mencapai objektif sesebuah organisasi. Berbagai diletakkan hala tuju untuk mencapai objektif organisasi. Juga kita di dalam melaksanakan agenda maqasid syariah ini juga kita bercakap tentang mencapai objektif. Manajemen by objektif juga. Tetapi objektif yang kita bawa ini berasaskan kepada kerangka maqasid syariah ini lebih utuh sebenarnya, lebih holistik, kerana kita bukan hanya bercakap untuk mencapai objektif itu dalam konteks organisasi. Bukan kita hanya bercakap kita nak capai objektif organisasi demi keuntungan untuk kita dah tetapkan target-target untung yang tertentu untuk kita capai. Tetapi dalam maqasid syariah kita berfikir, melatih diri berfikir tentang matlamat akhir yang kita nak capai. Dan bila kita meletakkan minda maqasid itu, kita melatih kita berfikir matlamat akhir itu ialah objektif syarak yang kita telah tetapkan, iaitu menjaga agama kita. Bila kita dah letakkan macam itu, redha Allah yang kita harapkan, maknanya apa juga perlakuan yang kita pada bawah proses yang berlaku, kita mengurus, mentadbir, mengurus keuangan, integriti kita, semua kita dapat susunkan dengan baik, sebab matlamat akhir kita ialah kita nak redha Allah, kita nak pahala daripada Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, dan kita nak yang terbaik apa yang ditetapkan dalam syariat Islam. Itu yang melatih kita berfikir matlamat akhir. Dan membina peribadi mulia seperti yang saya sebut tadi lah, bila kita dah fikir sesuatu itu bahawa kita melakukan sesuatu, kita dah meletakkan objektif syarak itu di ujung sekali. Maknanya proses yang berlaku, peribadi kita, integriti kita, kita akan jaga dengan elok. Dan yang ketiganya ialah bila kita menggunakan minda maqasid ini, dan contoh saya dah letak tadi, dacing, maslahah dan mafsadah. Jadi kita dapat menyelesaikan apa juga konflik yang berlaku. Contoh adalah konflik isu pandemik COVID-19 ini. Kita berdepan dengan pelbagai masalah ekonomi, pelbagai masalah kesihatan, pelbagai masalah berkaitan dengan nyawa. Jadi perimbangan yang bagaimanakah yang kita nak tentukan untuk kita nak membuat satu keputusan untuk maslahah ammah. Jadi keputusan yang dibuat itu bukannya untuk kepentingan diri kita, tetapi keputusan yang dibuat itu untuk maslahah ammah selaku ulil amri, untuk menjaga seluruh rakyat negara kita. Satu negara yang nak dijaga. Jadi menyelesaikan konflik, imbangan antara menjaga agama, menjaga nyawa, menjaga akal, menjaga keturunan dan menjaga harta. Macam Dr. Prof. Azlan sebut tadi, bila kita memikir, bila kita nak membuat satu keputusan, kita kena gabungkan ke semua sekali. Mana yang patutnya kita dahulukan? First thing first. First thing first. Yang tu yang kita sebut tadi. Yang aulawiyatnya apa yang kita nak buat. Jadi dalam konteks COVID, kita meletakkan menjaga nyawa yang terlebih dahulu. Sebabnya, bila kita meletakkan nyawa terlebih dahulu, nyawa terjaga dengan baik, maknanya selepas itu menjaga akal, menjaga keturunan, menjaga harta dapat diuruskan dengan baik. Walaupun ada juga mudarat, tetapi mudaratnya tidaklah sebesar macam kita melibatkan penjagaan nyawa tadi. Dan sekiranya nyawa terancam, kalau kita tidak menjaga nyawa, pandemik ini merebak dan mengakibatkan banyak nyawa terancam. Bila nyawa terancam, dari segi kita nak menjaga akal pun kita tidak dapat. Sebenarnya macam mana kita nak melaksanakan tugas-tugas dalam pendidikan kalau ramai yang terkorban, ramai yang melibatkan kematian. Menjaga nyawa, menjaga nyawa, menjaga akal, menjaga keturunan kita juga terancam, menjaga harta, banyak harta yang perlu digunakan oleh kerajaan, kos yang perlu digunakan oleh kerajaan untuk menangani isu COVID yang makin teruk, makin meningkat sehingga melibatkan ramai nyawa yang terancam. Itu dia punya perkaitan-perkaitan yang perlu kita lihat. Saya bagi contohlah untuk dalam kita membuat sesuatu keputusan yang dengan menggunakan pendekatan maqasid syariah. Dan yang seterusnya ialah berkaitan juga dengan minda maqasid yang saya nampak. Kalaulah tadi Tun ada sebut tadi bagaimana kita nak isu rasuah yang banyak berlaku makin meningkat di negara kita ini. Bagaimana kita nak menghadapi dan menyelesaikan isu-isu yang berlaku ini. Kita telah bercakap tentang isu integriti ini telah terlalu lama saya ingat. Kita dah berbagai kaedah yang kita gunakan, tetapi satu kaedah holistik yang kita belum gunakan itu secara spiritual yang mungkin kita boleh gunakan untuk tambah baik, tambah nilai dalam apa yang kita telah laksanakan sekarang ni ialah kita melatih bagaimana anak-anak kita daripada awal lagi, bagaimana kita boleh melatih mereka untuk berfikir tentang 5 perkara tadi. Bila melakukan sesuatu perkara, kita memikirkan 5 perkara tadi. Kalau kita nak menjaga integriti, bila kita melibatkan urusan keuangan, kita dah meletakkan apa yang kita lakukan. Adakah aku lakukan ini akan menggadaikan agama? Adakah apa yang aku lakukan ini akan mengancam nyawa? Jadi kalau kita boleh letakkan framework seumpama itu dalam diri, dalam pembangunan insan, dalam kursus-kursus latihan, dalam pendidikan yang diberi di peringkat anak-anak kita sehingga ke peringkat pentadbiran kerajaan, saya yakin insya-Allah kita mampu mengekang isu-isu rasuah yang berlaku dan dapat membina integriti dan kredibiliti yang lebih kuat di kalangan rakyat negara Malaysia. Dan juga yang saya lihat juga ialah isu tadi Tun ada sebut tentang pencemaran yang berlaku pencemaran terhadap alam, khazanah alam kita yang kita ada di Malaysia ini, adakah itu merupakan kita jangan lihat penjagaan harta, menjaga keturunan dan harta itu hanya dari aspek menjaga keturunan itu hanya dari segi keluarga kita sahaja. Kita jangan lihat menjaga harta itu hanya dari segi harta benda, wang, duit, wang, kereta kita, rumah kita saja, tetapi menjaga harta juga melibatkan khazanah alam yang kita jaga, yang kita akan warisi kepada keturunan kita. Menjaga harta alam kita, khazanah alam, hutan, bukit, bukau kita yang kita akan wariskan kepada keturunan kita untuk melalui kehidupan yang lebih sejahtera. Maknanya kalau kita dapat menjaga alam ini dengan baik, keturunan kita yang seterusnya, kehidupan mereka juga akan sejahtera dengan kehidupan yang lebih baik daripada kita. Jadi itu berkaitan antara duanya dan kita kena membina mulai daripada sekarang. Yang seperti yang saya sebut tadi, kita kena berfikir in a new box, itu ialah kita membina minda maqasid syariah, kita integriti kita kepada alam. Bukan integriti kita kepada kerja kita saja, tetapi integriti kita kepada alam, integriti kita kepada hutan, kepada sungai. Macam mana kita nak menjaga sungai, kita juga kena integriti kepada haiwan. Itu yang saya maksudkan, bagaimana kita, maknanya kalau kita dapat menjaga alam dengan baik, itu adalah salah satu part daripada menjaga harta. Kalau kita dapat menjaga sungai kita dengan baik, itu juga part daripada menjaga keturunan kita. Dan menjaga akal juga, bila udara bersih dan tidak ada pencemaran, akal kita juga akan terjamin dan nyawa kita juga tidak akan terancam. Dan dalam masa yang sama, kita dapat melaksanakan, menguruskan kehidupan agama kita dengan lebih baik, dalam suasana yang lebih baik. Dan ini juga sebenarnya terkandung dalam SDG. Dalam SDG memang telah ditetapkan, iaitu 17 matlamat SDG, dan telah dipecahkan kepada 5. Daripada 17 itu disusun, diseparatkan kepada 5, iaitu kita bertanggungjawab untuk menjaga people. Bagaimana kita nak membangunkan orang-orangnya, manusia-manusianya, people, planet, dan kita nak mewujudkan prosperity, peace, partnership. Itu berkaitan dengan SDG dan ia sangat berkait rapat juga dengan maqasid syariah yang kita duk bercakap hari ini. Dan saya suka juga nak mencadangkan supaya dalam kita nak form Khaira Ummah ini, framework yang kita nak bangunkan ini juga kita integratekan sekali bersama dengan Sustainable Development Goals. Maknanya apa yang kita laksanakan, Islam tidak pernah memisahkan perkara-perkara baik yang telah dibawa oleh orang bukan Islam. Kita boleh menggunakannya selagi mana ia mendatangkan maslahah kepada agama, kepada rakyat dan kepada negara kita dan tidak bercanggah dengan hukum syarak. Itu yang saya cuba untuk highlightkan untuk hari ini. Dan ini juga minda maqasid seperti yang mana saya sebut tadi, kita sebenarnya kena bergerak, tidak lagi duduk di dalam konsep-konsepnya, tetapi kita sekarang dah dalam praktikalnya bagaimana kita nak melaksanakan untuk dalam ini, contoh dalam kelestarian alam apa yang kita nak buat. Dan ini saya cuba cadangkanlah kalau untuk maqasid syariah framework, Maqasidic framework for formation of Khaira Ummah. Jadi bila saya melihat kepada ayat Al-Quran tadi, iaitu kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. Jadi ada 3 perkara kat situ dan saya lihat tiga perkara ini adalah berkaitan dengan maslahah dan mafsadah, dan kita akan tumpukan kepada maslahah yang kita nak bawa dan kita cuba elakkan, kita buang sebanyak mungkin mafsadahnya. Dan daripada ayat Al-Quran tersebut, saya cuba sarankan kalau kita boleh wujudkan satu dalam kerangka, dalam framework Maqasidic framework tadi, kita cuba lahirkan satu code of practice. Code of practice ni sebab kalau kita hanya di dalam konsep kita tak dapat nak menguruskannya. Jadi kita kena narrow down, kita kena narrowkan apa framework yang kita nak bawa, dan dalam konsep maqasid yang terlalu besar itu bagaimana kita nak zahirkan pelaksanaannya. Jadi kita kena mengurus. Jadi kita kena bijak mengurus. Jadi kalau apa yang berlaku hari ini, kegagalan kita nak mengurus itulah yang menyebabkan berlaku pelbagai permasalahan. Saya tidak bukan hanya jabatan agama sahaja. Saya ingat perkara-perkara berkaitan dengan kegagalan mengurus ini bukan hanya di jabatan agama, tetapi melibatkan seluruh dunia mengalami masalah itu. Dan semua orang sebenarnya tercari-cari apakah satu panduan yang kita boleh gunakan untuk kita mengurus isu-isu ini. Panduan yang last long, dia memang sustainable, dia sampai bila-bila pun kita boleh gunakan, dan kita tak boleh gunakan satu brand yang boleh hanya guna untuk 2 tahun saja atau 3 tahun saja. Dan inilah masanya yang saya melihat maqasid syariah ini merupakan satu framework yang sangat holistik dan tidak hanya terhad kepada jabatan agama. Dia kena semua sekali agensi pentadbiran kerajaan khususnya di Malaysia menggunakan maqasid syariah ini sebagai base dalam governance. Kita nak membina polisi ke, nak membina pelan tindakan ke apa, kita melihat maqasid syariah ini, kita letak dia di depan sebagai hala tuju yang kita nak capai. Jadi dalam konteks ini, apa yang saya nampak, kita kena jot down satu-satu. Apa yang kita nak dalam Khaira Ummah ni terlalu besar Dr. Syekh, apa yang kita nak pergi sebenarnya. Kita mungkin kena buat timeline kita yang terlalu berapa tahun kita nak mencapai Khaira Ummah ini. 20 tahun, 30 tahun, macam agenda 2030 SDG itu diletak sampai 20-30 tahun. Jadi mungkin Khaira Ummah ini sepanjang zaman. Dan mungkin kita akan capai Khaira Ummah ni dalam part dulu. Khaira Ummah dalam menjaga agama, Khaira Ummah dalam menjaga harta, menjaga nyawa. Mungkin kita boleh tengok dari sudut-sudut itu dan kita boleh build sebenarnya sama ada dalam bentuk index atau dalam bentuk apa yang kita nak, yang untuk kita lihat facts and figure-nya. Dan ini saya cuba cadangkan sebagai code of practice kita untuk Khaira Ummah ini. Mungkin kita boleh lihat dari aspek kepimpinan. Yang paling penting sekali, nak mencapai apa pun, nak mencapai lebih-lebih lagi dalam Khaira Ummah, nak mencapai dalam konteks organisasi, nak mencapai KPI pun, apa yang sangat penting ialah kepimpinan. Kegagalan pemimpin gagal membawa bahteranya, akan gagallah keseluruhannya. Jadi kepimpinan sangat penting dekat sini, dan kita mungkin boleh lihat dari aspek kepimpinan ini minda maqasid yang kita nak bawa, apa yang kita nak bawa untuk kepimpinan ini, untuk para pemimpin kita. Minda yang kita nak bawa ialah minda maqasid syariah yang boleh last long sampai bila-bila, dan ia berpaksikan kepada asas yang sangat kukuh iaitu Al-Quran dan Sunnah, dan juga ada kaedah-kaedah fiqhiyah kat situ yang boleh digunakan oleh setiap pemimpin untuk membuat keputusan. Dan yang keduanya ialah berkaitan dengan personal. Kalau hanya ada pemimpin yang orang di bawahnya tak ada, tak bagus, pemimpin sebagus macam mana pun akan sukar untuk mencapai matlamat yang nak dicapai. Jadi orang yang di bawah, personalnya juga penting. Dan di sinilah pentingnya pembudayaan, bagaimana kita nak melatih, kalau dalam konteks YB Menteri Jabatan Agama, Jabatan Perdana Menteri Haiwan Agama selalu menyebut iaitu insaniyatul insan. Bagaimana kita nak memanusiakan manusia tu. Kita nak memanusiakan satu perkara yang sangat susah sebenarnya. Kadang-kadang kita selalu bercakap lebih senang lagi kita menjaga lembu sekandang atau kambing sekandang, tetapi kita susah sebenarnya nak insan kepada manusia yang ada. Bukan di peringkat negara, tetapi dalam konteks organisasi, dalam konteks bahagian, dalam rumah kita sendiri pun sebenarnya itulah isu yang sangat penting yang kita perlu kita buat. Dan masalah-masalah yang dihadapi itu kita perlu selesaikan, dan bagaimana kita nak selesaikan, wasilah apa yang kita nak guna, kaedah apa yang kita nak gunakan, itu yang kita kena tentukan hari ini, bahawa kita nak gunakan maqasid syariah sebagai minda, sebagai hala tuju yang kita nak capai. Dan khusus juga dalam polisi kerajaan, tak ada gunanya juga kita bercakap tetapi kalau pihak kerajaan tidak menyambut apa yang kita nak laksanakan. Dalam polisi-polisi yang dilaksanakan, saya ambil contoh dalam pelaksanaan pembangunan bandar, sebenarnya pembangunan bandar yang dilaksanakan oleh KPKT. Di peringkat KPKT juga telah dibangunkan satu doktrin perancangan dan pembangunan sejagat yang dipanggil dalam apa juga ada perancangan bandar, apa pembangunan apa-apa yang berkaitan dengan sustainable cities, environment ke apa, dia akan merujuk juga kepada doktrin pembangunan dan perancangan sejagat. Dan dalam doktrin tu ada 3 perkara penting yang kalau semua orang boleh nanti kalau rajin cuba Google tengok. Ada 3 perkara penting. Yang pertamanya ialah kita kepada pencipta. Kita apa yang kita buat, kita merujuk kepada pencipta, dan kita juga menjaga alam sekitar dan menjaga sesama insan, sesama manusia. Dia ada 3 perkara penting ini. Sebenarnya 3 perkara ini sangat berkait dengan maqasid syariah yang kita bercakap tadi. Sangat holistik doktrin ini, dan mungkin di peringkat kerajaan boleh membina lebih banyak lagi polisi-polisi yang seumpama itu. Dan yang akhirnya ialah berkait dengan etika, dan sebenarnya yang ni nilai-nilai murni ini berkait dengan etika lah. Bagaimana kita nak laksanakan, nak apa untuk bergerak dengan lebih mudah dan selari dengan agenda yang kita nak bawa. Etika bagaimana kita nak lahirkan di kalangan rakyat negara kita. Yang saya nampak di sini ialah berkaitan dengan accountability, keadilan kena ada, ketelusan, keberkesanan tak boleh urus, integriti juga, dan satu lagi kebebasan, tetapi kebebasan dalam keadaan bertanggungjawab. Itu dalam penerapan nilai-nilai murni yang saya maksud. Dan
Ustazah boleh
untuk akhirnya saya sebenarnya ini yang akhirnya, dan saya suka nak membawa tentang apa yang dikatakan oleh Ibnu Ashur. Ibnu Ashur ada menyebut bahawa maqasid syariah ini perlu dizahirkan. Maqasid syariah perlu dizahirkan dalam ruang lingkup kehidupan manusia. Prinsip maqasid syariah perlu diterjemahkan melalui pelbagai wasilah dan kaedah. Jadi bagaimana kita nak zahirkan itulah yang sangat penting hari ini. Dan kalau kita berjaya zahirkan maqasid syariah itu, insya-Allah saya ingat apa juga isu yang berlaku, permasalahan yang berlaku, kita dapat hadapi dan tangani dengan lebih baik daripada apa yang kita laksanakan sekarang. Dan yang paling penting pada hari ini saya lihat kita kena transform kita punya jiwa, transform kita, minda kita, dan kita jadikan minda maqasid syariah ini sebagai salah satu wasilah untuk kita membina insaniah ke arah kita mewujudkan Khaira Ummah negara kita. Saya ingat itu sahaja. Terima kasih kepada Dr. Syekh dan semua yang sudi meluangkan masa untuk mendengar pertanyaan saya tadi. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Ustazah Nur Safina. We shall now move on to our final panelist, yang bahagia Profesor Dr. Muhammad Shukri bin Saleh from the Center for Islamic Development Management Studies, University Science Malaysia. Professor Shukri, you have heard the inputs from our previous 6 panelists. From your perspective, are the initiatives undertaken by Malaysia enough to preserve religion, life, mind, progeny and property, especially during the pandemic? And if not, what more needs to be implemented? Yang bahagia Profesor Dr. Shukri, the floor is now yours.
Yang amat berbahagia dan amat berbahagia yang berkati yang berbahagia dan berbahagia juga let me start by expressing that maqasid syariah is possible in forming the Khaira Ummah at all times, not necessarily during the time of destruction and crisis, but also during peaceful and this is the first point. The second point is that moreover the use of maqasid syariah as a framework, express the underline the framework in forming the Khaira Ummah is very much familiar. There are at least 2 reasons for this. Firstly, Khaira Ummah is Islamically based, and its framework therefore has to be Islamic. And for this, the Maqasid al-Sharia has been accepted by many scholars to be Islamic. Secondly, I'm nervous in informing the Khaira Ummah to not reiterate the experience of other efforts, other previous efforts in establishing Islam. Alhamdulillah, many Islamic efforts have been done in Malaysia, but then unfortunately have been spread in un-Islamic areas. For instance, the products of Islamic banks are Islamic, but the institutional management is still in the form of Western policy-based management. Islamic economics is supposed to be Islamic, but its assumptions and concepts are still intimately attached with neoclassical economics. And then ending eventually with a fixed-based neoclassical economics rather than the pure Islamic economics. So zakat and wakaf are Islamic, but their operational mechanisms are more of a conventional commercialization motivated. And in some cases, even used to fulfill the Western ethnocentric development framework, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, without redefining the concept embedded in the activities according to Islam. As such, the effort to develop the Khaira Ummah and Islamically instructed within an Islamic framework of Maqasid Sharia is therefore not only applicable and commendable, but also timely, wherever during the times of disruptions and crisis. Relatively, the right framework is much more needed during the times of disruptions and crisis than during the times of harmony and peace. The Islamic framework does not only provide a right diagnosis and prescriptions of any problem, but also comes in full of barakah and other divine gifts, inshallah. We are indeed thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Malaysia has actually attempted quite a number of initiatives, all of which conscious or unconsciously, right or indirectly, to have considered the essential elements of the Khaira Ummah. They do what is right and forbid what is wrong, and have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also in preserving religion, life, mind, company, and poverty of the Ummah. We observe, for instance, the initiatives of the Panggilan Islam during Consultation Maqasidic. We also observe Islam Hadari during Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badari. Index Syariah Malaysia during Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Razak. Rahmatan al-Alami during the Consultation Muhammad. And now the Mahash Rabbani during the present country. Even at state level, we witnessed Wawasan Syihat, for instance, in Tanzania, during the late Sri Wan Mokhtar Ahmad, and later we observed Islam Hadari Tanzania Bestari during the Betul, the Bangun Bersama Islam in Kelantan during the Tuan Guru Datuk Abdul Aziz Nikmat till now, and at present, even in Pulau Pinang, we observe there is an attempt to develop Khaira Ummah by the Majlis Ulama Islam Negeri Pulau Pinang. But then, however, if you look, you were to look at their education, their competency in preserving religion, life, mind, company, and poverty, as highlighted by our previous speaker, so the answer is unfortunately inadequate and needs to be revised and improved. There really at least three main things. There is the framework, the coverage, and the most important thing is the sustainability. And the reasons are as follows. Firstly, distinctive Islamic framework is much to be desired. It was only lately, in particular, beginning from the initiative of Index Sharia Malaysia, followed by Rahmatan lil Alami and Manhaj Rabbani, that Maqasid Sharia seems to be treated as the core or direct or indirectly the framework of the initiative. Other initiatives prior to this do not seem to emphasize on the framework of your initiative. However, the present discourse on the adoptions of the Maqasidic framework, and in our case, for the formation of Khaira Ummah, has yet to have a definitive thought. There seems to be scholars who begin to put forward further opinions beyond the Maqasid Sharia itself. For instance, there is an opinion among the scholars that the Maqasid Sharia is insufficient. What Malaysia is doing, particularly during the rule of Pakatan Harapan, was argued as much concentrated on overly legalistic norms, and it is epistemologically undetached from the Sharia-centric design that has dominated the post-colonial Muslim intellectual method. This scholar termed the Sharia-centric Islamic violence prior to the Pakatan Harapan rule, particularly during the administration of Datuk Seri Muhammad Najib, as Shariaization. This scholar is actually in favor of another Maqasid, we call Maqasid Akhlaq, as an addition to the Maqasid Akhlaq. Apart from the Maqasid Sharia and Maqasid Akhlaq, there is also another opinion that highlights the necessity of Maqasid Akhlaq. To all this opinion, the open further and deeper horizon of this work is in our attempt to adopt an accurate and right formation, a right framework for the formation of the Khaira Ummah, but not effort to it. Even if it is already convenient and confirmed that Maqasid Sharia is the only accurate and right framework, we still need to address these other opinions academically and convincingly to allow a solid trust among the Malaysians in general and the target groups in particular on what Malaysia is actually attempting to. Secondly, the coverage of this initiative is still incomprehensive. The target groups were only partially covered. Penerapan nilai-nilai murni, for example, was only confined to government administration. Index Sharia Malaysia was only confined to the measurement of the government status in carrying out the nation administration. Rahmatan lil Alamin was only confined to the administration of Islam, and the present Manhaj Rabbani is only confined to the Islam administration of agencies under the Prime Minister's Department of Affairs. So the only initiative that could be regarded as prior a comprehensive initiative was only the Islam Hadari. It was the sole comprehensive Islamic-based development strategy. So far, that covers almost all aspects, from faith and piety in Allah to just and trustworthy government, freedom and independence to the people, mastery of knowledge, balanced and comprehensive economic development, good quality of life for all, protection of the rights of minority groups and women, cultural and moral integrity, protection of the environment, and a strong defense policy. However, unfortunately, it was not lived long. It ended with the end of Abdullah Ahmad Badai's community. Now, to my opinion, as Islam hopefully is the most comprehensive initiative of all, it will be a great effort if Islam Hadari could be revisited and revised. It could become the core initiative in the formation of the Khaira Ummah, injecting into it the strength and dynamics of other previous and later initiatives. One may wonder whether this is politically feasible, but I think there is no harm trying. Thirdly, and the most important of all is the sustainability of the initiative. The past experiences have exhibited that sustainability of all the initiatives were unstable, and in fact, to some extent, insecure. The thoughtless, the survival duration relates very much to the rise and fall of political figures that advocated them, irrespective whether they are in the same government or more were in different governments. Now, we are witnessing curiously and in fact waiting in anxiety what will happen to the Manhaj Rabbani of the present day. If there is a change in the leadership of the department responsible for it, for a change in the upper leadership in the same government, what else if there is a change of the whole government. So, based on these previous experiences, a serious search for an effective formulation of what could be regarded as a political space initiative needs to be explored urgently. But the main things to be considered are firstly, the location that houses the initiative. And secondly, the nature of the socio-economic and political system within or without which the initiative is going to be exploited. The formal formations of the Khaira Ummah falls in the realm of development. Could it be housed in any appropriate national development agency, such as the Economic Planning Unit and the Implementation and Coordination Unit, rather than the religious agency like JAPI? Or alternatively, could it be directly housed under Majlis Raja-Raja? Placing Manhaj Rambani and the like in the APU and ICU would mean an integration of the development of the Khaira Ummah into national plan, especially the 5-year Malaysia plan. Hence, relatively, hopefully, inshallah, the sustainability. While alternatively, housing under Majlis Raja-Raja would mean guaranteed sustainability, as it would not affected by any political changes as long as the Raja Perlembagaan remains. However, even if it is housed under Majlis Raja-Raja, the dedication of an effective agency to be responsible for the plan, execution, and translation of the initiative into practical reality is still a necessity. Moreover, as previous experiences prove the limitation and hardship that is taken place in many ways in handling such a critical, heavy, and tough task. And as for the system, we must think of a workable way of how the initiative could be practically operationalized within the dominant world socio-economic and political system. We have non-Islamic on the one hand and the Islamic on the other hand. That is prevalent in Malaysia at the moment. Or is it possible to implement the initiative side by side or from without the community? Brothers and sisters, apart from all the above, we also need to formulate indicators, sub-indicators of the accomplishments of each principle of that Maqasid Sharia. Actually, Malaysia has already started to attempt the formulation of the indicators, sub-indicators in respect of the applicability of each principle of Maqasid Sharia. It began during the premiership of Dr. Najib. There was an introduction of Inlet Sharia Malaysia, but unfortunately was disappeared along with the fall of Dr. Najib. As had been experienced, there also are the previous and later indicators. There is no question that the need to formulate the indicators of all the 5 rights and points in Maqasid al-Sharia. It is necessary indeed. And in fact, the present Manhaj Rambani has already developed an application called I-MAQ-SD. I-MAQ-SD. I'm not too sure how to pronounce this. Very difficult to pronounce it, yeah? Which is to measure the 5 principles of the Maqasid al-Sharia. Though now it is only confined to measure the Islamic administration function of agencies under the Prime Minister's Department of Religious Affairs alone. We hope that, inshallah, as time goes and the present political power remains, the authority will widen the application beyond the Islamic administrations of the religious affairs agencies, inshallah. One important thing that I still need to relook into seriously is the integration of the I-MAQ-SD with the 70 agendas of the 2050 SG. Are we going to follow the 70 agendas of the 2030 SDGs without redefining it from Islamic perspective? So I think if we do that, we won't go anywhere because we submit to the Western ethnocentric thinking and justify it with our Islamic views. I think each of these 17 agendas needs to be revisited and redefined according to Islam. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheikh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Shukri, for your inputs to our discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, Alhamdulillah, we have heard from all 7 panelists who have shared their views and opinions, as well as sharing their experience on the theme that is the focus of today's expert consultation, namely Maqasidic framework for the formation of Khaira Ummah, the best of people. We have now come to the end of our program this morning. On behalf of the organizer, IKIM, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji bin Abdul Hamid for gracing this event and providing us with a thematic address earlier. I would also like to record our sincerest appreciation to all our 7 panelists for their very valuable contributions in the forms of ideas, sharing of experiences, as well as providing inputs that have indeed enriched our discussion this morning. Thank you also to all observers and media practitioners who have followed this program from the very beginning. I would like to apologize for any shortcomings in the running of this expert consultation. Nonetheless, I hope that this program has been beneficial and informative to everyone, inshallah. A special thank you to the Secretariat and technical team who have worked tirelessly to ensure the smooth running of the program. Again, thank you to everyone who have participated, contributed, and attended. On that note, I end with Wabillahi Taufiq wal Hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.